Welcome to the Emergency International Food Security webinar. I've got a PowerPoint presentation up here for you at the same time that you can see my wonderful face for radio. And we appreciate you being here. My name is Dr. Daniel Daves. We have been working with global food providers for decades, helping to feed the poor, widows, and orphans around the world. And I would like to just take you through a few slides here to start. First of all, who's Dr. Daniel Daves? Well, you can find me out on the web very, very easily. I have been a business person. I've been in ministry, pastored for 20 years in the United States. And I've also been a stock trader and trainer of students for over 20 years. And at the same time, running around the world, doing missions work. And we, about 12 years ago, responded to the global coming food famines and moved right into Latin America, where we could have a 12-month growing environment, where we could learn dynamic food growing principles and laws so that we could share them with you 12 years later. And here we are. We have been moving around the world internationally with instructional courses in order to help people prepare for coming global famine. And that famine is already here. It is just ramping up. We will talk about the dynamics of that in just a moment. But that is who Daniel Daves is. If you ever get out to globalfoodproviders.com, that is our nonprofit organization. And we, of course, are out here as well. And let me show you a photo here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, mostly on YouTube and Facebook. There's my wonderful wife, Tracy. We are out here in Chiriquí, Panama, where we've been out here for years building the prototype dehydration center and farm. You can see a photo of that now. That is our 6,000 meter prototype greenhouse and the dehydration center, which we'll talk more about in the near future. Okay, super duper. And let's, I want to mention this as well. This is a free webinar, no charge, no pressure. We're not here to sell you anything. We're not here to ask you to sign up for anything. We're so glad to be connected with you right now by webinar and by email if you signed into the email. But there are some who ask, well, how can I help? If you would ever like to donate, you can just go to globalfoodproviders.com, get up there to that donate deal, and there's a lot of ways that you can do it. If you're in the U.S., it's tax deductible, and we do appreciate any and all donations. It helps us pay for expensive satellite link up in Panama and for all the other expenses to run that crazy farm. All right. Also, at the end of this meeting, after our two special speakers are finished, I am going to give away the book that my most recent book called Food is Power. We do have it in English and Spanish, working on an Indian version of that book as well. Not quite finished yet, but I'll be giving that link to you and getting that book to you at the end. This book it's a short read, but it gives all the details to a community leader, especially a Christian community leader who has the obligation before God to feed widows and orphans and to take care of the community 24/7 with anything that's coming their way. This will give you all the data and everything that you need. So that is also coming. Super. Let's just tell you a moment about our Farm and Dehydration Center. We grow superfoods super fast. You can find us again on YouTube, hundreds of videos, instructional videos on the how-tos of doing things, and also some information on the global food crisis. out there, but we have learned many, many secrets, and I'm going to share some of them with you today, including how do you create your own fertilizer when there is no fertilizer, or when it's gone up 300 or 400%, such as today. Fertilizer in Panama is 300 or 400 higher than it used to be, driving most farmers in the commercial world bankrupt. But we are offline, off grid, and we create our own fertilizer. I'm going to show you how to do that today as one of the bullet points, one of the must-haves. Now, that farm that we have is scalable. We can scale it down to your backyard and a garden, or we can scale it up to 20 hectares or 100 hectares. It's scalable. That's the great news about what we're going to tell you, is these principles and these rules of preserving and preparing your community are scalable up or down. If you're in a community of 500, if you're in a community of 5, if you're in a community of 5,000 or 5 million, it's scalable. All right, very good. Let's start off today with just a few crazy headlines. And I'm going to try, if I can, sorry, this is kind of a rough version. This is a rough webinar, because I'm the guy at the helm right now trying to talk and do everything at the same time. So the breaking headlines, I am going to try to throw out here a couple of live websites. But first of all, the first thing we can do is we can go straight to the United Nations World Food Program, and they will show you basically what's happening. So we start off right now. Right now, they're saying this is a global food crisis like no other. Here's a news feed that just came out, and that is on April 15th. Today, the greatest famine in history could start globally in 2023 due to fertilizer shortages. Well, what happens when fertilizers are hard to find? Food supplies disappear. And right now, there's many dynamics around the world. One of them is that Russia-Ukraine war, where many large percentage of fertilizer used to come out of that location. It is now shut down, and that means food supplies are diminishing. Again, the fertilizers that are available right here in Panama, where we're at and farming, if they're available, if they are up in price. And so farmers, in order to try to meet the price demands at the dock for their food, they have to reduce supplies of fertilizer if they can find it. And what happens then? Of course, the farmers' food supplies go down. It's a vicious cycle of poverty. Less fertilizer, smaller supplies. The farmer makes less money, the farmer is going deeper in the hole, and eventually it can collapse the entire supply system. That's why the greatest famine in history, and that cannot be understated, could start right here in 2023. This is a Time article. I'm going to switch over to this Time article if I can. Let's do that right now. This is the head of the World Food Program. He feels like he has not been effective. He's over here in Davos right now at the World Economic Forum. David Beasley, when he started as the director, there was 100 million people around the world starving, and right now it's up like 400 million, and he's saying we're going in reverse, and there may not be enough food for everyone in 2023. The good news is there is food available. The bad news is that this food is not coming to your docks or to your grocery store in the future. You can't depend on that. And so one of the things he says here, why are we going backwards? I think this is important to know. And I'm laying out some foundation here for you. But he says, when I took this job six years ago, there was 80 million people marching to starvation. That then went to 135 before COVID. Now it's 276. That was before Ethiopia, Afghanistan, Ukraine. Ukraine grows enough food to feed 400 million people, but it went from the biggest breadbasket of the world to the longest bread lines. Now, imagine that. We didn't know this war was coming, but it sprung upon the world, and we don't know what is coming to our neck of the woods. We don't know what's coming to our nation. There's a lot of things from climate emergencies to we'll discuss some of this in the near future, but those things are coming. And these are the wild cards that will determine yes or no. Does your nation suffer, or does your community go straight down the toilet? Here's the world's hungriest countries. We'll just take a look here. This is on actionagainsthunger.org. If you're looking, and some of the hungriest right now. Here's the 6 countries: Afghanistan, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan, Yemen. These countries are all going to hear and see this webinar. Leaders are going to see it, and they're going to have their opportunities. Now, they're the 6 top hungriest nations in the world right now. But look at these others: Angola, Benin, Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Central African Republic, Chad, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Haiti, Honduras, Guinea, Kenya, Lebanon, Madagascar. Kenya is represented here today, by the way. Good to see you here, Kenya. And let's see, Madagascar, Mali. There, it just goes on. Mozambique, Niger, Sri Lanka, Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, and Zimbabwe. These are the top, but I'm telling you right now, I can show you data just from 2 years ago. Panama and Latin America is up. I believe it's 269%. Famine is up 269% since the COVID nightmare. So these are just a few of the headlines that are out right now. You can verify them just by going to go to the web and find them easily. Here we go. Let's go right back to the slideshow now and continue forward. There is more than enough food produced in the world to feed everyone on the planet, yet as many as 828 million people are still going hungry. This is now. This is not in 1, 2, 5 years from now. This is right now. So we had a question from one of our attendees, and that is, what about population explosion, population reduction? The fact is, we have enough land, we have enough resources, we've got enough to feed the whole world and its growing population. There is no need, as the globalist mentality is, to reduce our 8 billion down to 1 billion. No need for that. We can feed them all. We'll deal with that here in just a little bit, but the good news is the food can be produced. Everything just has to change. We've got to change the dynamics. And part of the dynamic change is we're looking for, and we're calling upon leaders right now. Leaders, these are new day, new generational leaders that are going to step up to the plate. You may have just been a housewife, mom, stay at home, but God himself may be calling you to lead your community in a global food revolution. You may be an executive, a corporate executive, and God may be calling you to step up and save your city. If you're a politician, mayor, save your city, save your community. If you're in a national political deal, save your community, save your nation. This is the day for new world leaders. And when I say world, I just mean new leaders that are thinking about the globe, the world. The Bible says in James, from a Christian point of view, that pure and undefiled religion is taking care of widows and orphans in their distress. And those are the first two that go down the toilet when famine hits, because they don't have a representative. I have chosen, my wife and I, to become representatives for those that are in deep trouble. And we'll be the voice for those who have no voice. And we believe God may be calling you as well to be that voice. With that, I would just like to say a quick prayer before we go any further. Father, in Jesus' name, I ask that everyone under the sound of my voice watching this webinar today, that they would hear your call to take care of widows and orphans, those who are distressed. Cain said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" I think the Bible response to that is absolutely, we are our brother's keeper. I need to care for my neighbor. I need to love my neighbor as much as I love myself. And so I thank you, Lord, for speaking to us and helping us to understand how to care for our family, our neighbors, our communities, and our nations in the whole world, and how to meet this global famine head on, to defeat it, to thrive and prosper, even in tough times and tough locations where people can't move out of the way, where we can still thrive and prosper in times of famine, because we are developing a new system, a new government. We're developing a new food security program. Thank you, Lord, for blessing this meeting in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, here is a quick slide for you. 5 of the major reasons that global famine and poverty have hit: inequality, climate change. I don't call it climate change myself. I think that's a political activist word. There are climate crazy things happening around, but I'm not going to ask you to bow your knee and submit to Mother Earth because the climate may be changing. It has always changed. It always moves in rhythm like everything else in life, up and down, warmer and cooler. That's how things work. But if you are poor, and we see jungles becoming deserts and deserts becoming jungles, and you can't get out of the way and your jungle becomes a desert, it's going to cause or wreak havoc in your life. There's conflict. And when global conflict happens, whether it's political conflict, whether it's war, whether it's a water war, people fighting over who gets the river and who doesn't, you're going to have poverty and famine. We have disasters and emergencies. A volcano pops, everything changes around that volcano. And of course, poverty. Poverty is a fluid word. Let me take 1 minute on that. Our goal in our communities around here is to identify poverty and to eradicate it. And it's good to have Pastor Dawes here from India, a good friend of mine, who said we're going to eradicate poverty. That's one of his major goals, and I embrace it as well. But what is poverty? It's fluid. So for me, if I don't have hot water, and that's a permanent deal, I have a lack of access to blank. For me, that would be hot water. That would be poverty. I need some warm water to clean things, wash things. But I have a lot of people that work for me and live all around me that I can offer them a hot water heater and for a shower, and they don't want it. They don't need it. They've lived their whole lives. So is poverty not having access to hot water? No. It's fluid based on culture and community needs. So what you have to do is identify what is poverty around you and then attack that. What is the lack of access to blank? What is blank? Figure that out and then go answer that question in your community, and you will be dealing directly with poverty. Excellent. In my book, Global Food Revolution, I talked about 4 facts and a wild card that we are sitting on right now. I have just canceled 4, and added a 5th fact. And you're going to see that fact in a moment. Let's go through it real quick here. First of all, fact number 1, global population explosion. We're going to 8.9 billion by 2030, and we have got to feed 8.9 billion. Can we? Yes, we can. But not if you subscribe to satanic globalist ideas of we just need to get rid of the population and reduce it down to 900 million. Or, it's all out there on the web what the globalists want. They're not going to get it, not on our watch. So we can feed them all. We just have to have a global food revolution. The UN reports by 2030, 20 to 40% of the world's population will not be able to find 1,000 calories per day. Well, what do you do with that? Did you know that 40% of all the food we're growing around the world, we lose it? 10 to 15% at the farm goes in the river. 10 to 15% from trucking and grocery stores goes in the trash can. And about 10% at home level, we don't get eaten, goes in the trash can. 40%. And from our opinion, dehydration is a key, where we lock in the nutrients of the food and we have up to 1 year to get it into location rather than watching it rot in a few days and having to be thrown away. We have dehydrators in our farm in Panama. We dehydrate every day, and we give the powdered foods, superfoods, to widows and orphans and to those in great need. We see here number two of the shocking facts. We have diminishing usable farmlands. Our capacity is shrinking, not growing. Farms are shutting down. If you want to go into usable topsoil, we are, because of monocropping, we are losing topsoil right into the ocean. I saw a report not long ago that we have only 50 harvests left on planet Earth, 50 years left of topsoil. There will be no topsoil left to grow on. We better get busy figuring that one out, and it can be figured out. Number 3, technology to increase nutritional production is stalled. It's not catching up with global demand. What does that mean? It means that if you needed lettuce, we were growing lettuce in 60 days, and we found some new technologies to get it down to 45. Right now, through hydroponics, we can go from seed to harvest in 28 days. But now we need some food to grow from seed to harvest in 15 days. It's not happening. Technology. So we have population explosion, farmland reduction. Technology is not keeping up with the need for more food. We have to grow 50% more by 2050, but we are not growing more. One of the things we can look at, very important, I already explained it, look back at the 40% we're losing and save that. That will help band-aid this while we are figuring out the global food revolution for the planet. Number 4, superbugs, bacteria, viruses, and fungus are hitting. I don't have to tell you, around the world, all of the funguses and new bacteria that are hitting. A super bacteria has been on in Florida, knocking out Florida, United States, knocking out their orange production, and they've run out of options except now just to spray their trees with human antibiotics to try to knock this bacteria out. I don't know if you've all heard of any super viruses in the last few years that locked the world down, killed millions of people. That virus was not attacking the plant, it attacked humanity. But this is fact number 4. Things are supersizing. They're not getting smaller, they're getting bigger. And a global food revolution is needed to combat this, because the old systems we have in place are not combating. As a matter of fact, we lost more people to famine through the COVID nightmare than we did to COVID. I had one bishop of 800 churches in Africa who contacted me before COVID. He said, we want to do the global food revolution. I got 800 churches and pastors. We're getting ready. We want to learn. And I said, when do you want to do it? He said, in the next year or two. Next month, bam, COVID hit. He called me 15 months later, actually sent me an email 15 months later. He said, "Are you still there? Are you still alive?" We've lost 200 of our pastors and their entire church families and communities to famine because the food system broke over here in Africa. My friends, I can't even imagine what it would be like being a pastor, being a church member, being a community member, saying, "God, please save us, please send food," and then we die. Those guys missed their appointment by 1 month. And that's how critical and crucial this thing is. We have to be ready for the next superbug, bacteria, virus, and fungus. That means we have a system in place. That system, you're going to be given the top 10 plus today, and you're going to be shown what to do. Here was clear back in September of 2020. Bloomberg said, "No meat, no milk, no bread, hunger crisis rocks Latin America." Look at that. And Ministry of Labor in Panama, by the end of 2020, 25% unemployment. You wouldn't believe how many people all around Latin America have become restaurant owners, delivering food in their pickup trucks and their vans, which used to be school vans. Now they're food delivery vans, trying to sell vegetables up and down the streets. Everything's changed. People have had to become very savvy and entrepreneurial in order to survive and to feed their families. And this last crisis was a nice one. The next ones to come may not be so nice. Can you imagine? Panama, we could not find up to 40% of the school children during COVID because they retreated back into the hills, retreated back into their indigenous communities, the Indian communities, and we couldn't find 40% of them. You know what that in itself has done to our educational system right here in Panama. Now, every other Latin American nation, probably your nation, has already also suffered to some degree. But you knock the kids out of school for 18 months to 2 years, and the ramifications are going to be long-term for that. Here is number 5. This is the one that I added on after I wrote the book. Your government will always use yesterday's answers to try to solve today's problems. They will also use nefarious ideologies to seize more power and control during crisis. There's a famous saying in the United States, never let a crisis go to waste if you're a government official. And so with that, look at this next one here. All governments at this time are aligned in principle with the WEF. If you don't know any of this, start looking it up. Find it out. What is the agenda of the World Economic Forum? These boys have a plan for the world. They plan to crash our economies, put the world in famine, and have us begging on our knees for them to let us live. And so governments are aligned right now with this group, and they will be working with them probably against the people they're supposed to be serving. So not only do we have to navigate through population increase, usable farmland reduction, we've got to navigate through stalled technology, and we got to find technologies and start utilizing them. We have to get through the superbugs. And now we also have government structures around us that will probably try to shut us down, or who will probably make the wrong decisions that will not help feed the people. We have to navigate through this. So this is just important to understand. If you'd like to know more about what is this WEF, just start looking up Agenda 2030. Agenda 2030 is the overall plan of population reduction and compliance of all individuals. 2030. Time is short. Here's the wild card. I told you 5 facts in a wild card, and that is, we call it long-term weather pattern shifts causing food and water shortages, climate craziness, not climate change. I have been around long enough, some of you have as well, where I saw it. It's global cooling. Oh, it's going to kill us all. And then it started warming. Oh, I mean, it's global warming. It's going to kill us all. You need to pay taxes. And then it started cooling again. Oh, we've been wrong twice. Let's call it climate change. Yes, it is climate change, up and down. There are dynamics going on right now where, again, jungles are becoming deserts, deserts becoming jungles, volcanoes popping, things happening all over, earthquakes, famines, things happening. And so with that, we must prepare for the wild card. If you're living in a community, in a third world, or maybe a first world, third world community, you need to prepare and have your bullet point list. We're going to help you with that here today. Again, I'm laying the foundation for what these other speakers are going to be given to you. Okay. And let me now go into this moment where I have, as a born again believer in Jesus Christ, I have had many, many dreams, and every one of these dreams has always come true. I want to share this dream with you that I had in 2008. This is the one that set us on target for Latin America, to find a 12-month growing season, to learn how to grow food so that we could help others do the same during famine. Now, I had never successfully grown a tomato in my life when we started farming, so it was quite an experience. And it's been a wonderful experience in many ways, but the weight of the world has been on our shoulders for years. And here we are now with famine ramping up. We do believe it's a 7-year famine. We believe the famine will last right up through 2030. And I'll share that with you in just a moment. In this dream that I had in 2008, this is the only dream that, to our knowledge, has been backed up with a major Hollywood motion picture. In the dream, a president was on a big screen television in Dallas, Texas, with a bunch of people sitting around, and the big screens were up on the buildings. And he came on and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement to make. America, as you've known it, has ceased to exist. All property lines have been dissolved, and the US dollar is worthless." There were two more parts to this dream we won't go into today, but when he stated that, I knew, and I studied, and I knew what this meant, that there was going to be a dynamic global shift of power. There were going to be wars. There were going to be famines. We have seen that. This was in 2008. In that same dream, it was told to me by an angel that communism was the greatest threat to America. In 2008, we were all worried about ISIS. Today, we see communism taking over, communism on steroids, taking over the whole world in many ways. And so America has ceased to exist as we have known it. Property lines being dissolved. You want to talk about property lines? We can go down through the agricultural industry and see every property line dissolved. We can see all of your freedoms that are being dissolved. We can see governments being dissolved. We see man and woman being dissolved. Marriage and family, and we see everything's being dissolved for a new, revealed future world order. And the US dollar is worthless. It's now coming out. People are bailing on it. Nations are bailing on it. We knew it was worthless in 2008. It's just gotten worse. And now the whole world is talking about what I heard in 2008. I want to tell you this, that it was this dream and some other dramatic words that have led us to this webinar today. And they've never been wrong. They've always been right. And I'm going to give you a couple other words that I've received that I think would be perfect for you. By the way, this scene that I just spoke to you about was found, you can see it on YouTube under Atlas Shrugged 2. Look at the movie trailer. You will see exactly the president on the billboards. I wrote about this. I put drawings in the book called Warning America, Attempted Hostile Takeover Exposed. Did that book, I think it was back in 14 or 15 is when that book was released. This movie, I had no contact with these people. As far as I know, they've never had contact with me, but they put that scene in their movie called Atlas Shrugged 2. Look it up. It's pretty dynamic. All right. Another thing that we are on, and this was a command given to me as a born-again believer. I'm sharing this with you because I believe we all need to seize control of food at the root level. Until that point, I had always, we'd fed widows and orphans, but we'd done it from a distance. We funded people on boots on the ground and helped them feed the poor. We had gotten donations of semi-truckloads of food and we had transported it over. But when I received this word from the Lord, seize control of food at the root level, I knew that that meant I'm going to have to start farming, whatever farming means. I had no idea at the time, but I was going to have to get control at the root. And that is exactly what I believe you and I here in this webinar, we need to consider seizing control of food at the root level. Whatever that means. If that's a garden grow tower on the balcony of your apartment, or if that is finding a like-minded individual who will loan you an acre of land in the area, whatever that means, you'll get that instruction, you'll get that download for you and for your community. Also, we knew, and this was another word that came to me, build everything after the model of the Son. I won't go into detail with that, but from this point on, we know that 9 out of 10 business models fail in the first 2 years in the United States of America. That's not a very healthy percentage of success. But if you will build after the model of the Son, the way God built the Son, you will be successful. You'll never have to worry about losing your business or your vision for helping your community. Build everything from this point forward after the model of the Son. Lastly, this is a word that we have been working on, and that is build an ark of safety to protect your faith, family, finances, and future. If you're interested in building the ark, you do need to probably go back to Genesis and start looking at the template. Now, we know that there's not a flood of water coming. We're not into building boats, but we do know that the ark, there's a few themes behind the ark. Number one, spiritually, the ark is Jesus. He is the ark of safety to get into. You got to get into him, and all will be well with your soul. But an ark of safety is also a well-informed, advised, and moving community. That is the ark that we're building. Communities around the world who have food security in mind and who have the capacity to make changes in their community. Every level, from mom, housewife, business owner, politician, educator, teacher, principal, whoever you are in your community, you have the capacity and I believe the mandate to get busy building your community as an ark of safety to protect what you have so it's not destroyed. Why do we build? Food, water, jobs, church, freedom. Life is under attack. If you haven't felt the attack over the last few years, you're sleeping. We also have a lot of corruption, which means decay or rot, immorality, perversion, dishonest, containing errors and alterations. That's the meaning of the word corruption. And we're also genetically under attack. Our seed is under attack. Our food is under attack. Politics is under attack. Business, family. All property lines have been dissolved because there's an attack on what is right, good, just, and godly. And so we understand that. That's why we're building. We build arks of safety because God intends to shield his people. Any who will build, any who will get into the ark. Remember, there are those who will not get into the ark. Here's point one. I told you 10 steps, 10 points. Well, here's point one. You need to build a team. You got to get your community, your ark together, and you need to build large enough for your vision. So hey, don't build an ark big enough like a 12-foot John boat. Don't build it just for your family, because your neighbors are going to need food. Build big enough for them as well. Understand the dynamics of the ark. There you go. Genesis 6, 11, and 12. And that will tell you right now what size, how do you build it. I've looked at this for years now. What kind of wood do you build with? You build with something that's impervious to the storm. The wood that was used for the ark was impervious to salt water. They used pitch. That's oil. That's energy in today's world. There was a roof on it. Make sure you got a roof on your ark, right? Airflow, doors. How many people? There was a door. There was a window. How many people and how many animals do you need to build this ark for? Just understand the dynamics so that you start today thinking big enough for your whole community. Nothing worse than getting on your ark and all your neighbors saying, whoa, hey, help here. Sorry, only got enough seats for the family of 4. That's not a good plan. We are here to build our communities so that as many who will enter will be saved. Point number 2, we need to find resources and land. I'm talking to leaders now, talking to new generation leaders. You may say, well, I can't speak like a pastor. You don't need to speak like a pastor. I wouldn't be a good mayor. You don't need to be a mayor. There is a new global food revolution on the rise, and God needs you as a leader to step up and lead your people right from where you're at. And so we need approximately a hectare of land, 2.2 acres, to provide emergency nutrition for 2,000 people. Be thinking about that. Can you find an acre, 2 acres? Do you have 2,000 in your community? Are you gonna be a point guard for 5,000 people? Then you're gonna need about 3 hectares of land. All right. And you're going to need to find some people. Get your team together. Farmers, food supply people, company executives, educators, teachers, politicians. You're going to need them all. Now, the good news is, and I think our speaker at the end is going to deal with this, you don't need everyone. You just need a team. All you need is a team. But you don't. The team doesn't have to be the whole community. Don't think that you need to find 50% of the community to get involved. No, just a team will make it all happen. Now, here's point number 3, and I'm coming to the end of my part of this today. Let's see, and yeah, I'm right on time here. Point number 3, I want you to think, we're here in the tropics in Latin America. We've done a lot of work in Asia and Africa in that 1040 window where weather is really dynamic. Now, you might be in Canada. Canada is represented here today. You might be, as a matter of fact, let's just take a look here. I want to see this real quick. Who is represented here today? We've got Montreal, excellent, Panama, Virginia, Florida, Alabama, Atlanta, Kano, K-A-N-O, Nigeria, Suva, Fiji. We've got lots of friends in Fiji. God bless you. Brazil, Los Angeles, Kenya, South Africa, Canada, and India. We've got lots of folks here from around the world represented today, and God bless you. Welcome to you. Thanks for sticking this out and being with us today. Again, this is being recorded so that we're going to put this recording out all over the world. We're spending here this year thousands of dollars in advertising on Facebook just to get the free webinar and information out all over the world in the hardest hit of nations. All right, so here's number 3. Point number 3 for you. You might want to write this down. Number 3 is you need to look up moringa and get it planted. Moringa is a tree that is called in India the drumstick tree. It actually originates from India. Got our friend Pastor Dawes, who's here. Dawes, if you are available, I might have you just come on just for a second and say hi. But Dawes was over here in Panama a few years ago, and he said, we've got this tree growing all over in India. Now, India is starving. Many people are starving to death in India, but the drumstick tree is growing there. And he said, our mamas always told us to eat the leaves, but we never knew why. The reason is it's also called the tree of life. You look at this, all the essential needs for humanity are there. All the vitamins, micronutrients, amino acids, and amazingly, 26% protein. I want you to think just for a minute of a village, a community, just maybe your own backyard. We need to get these moringa trees planted along your fence line. Every school needs moringa trees growing around. Once your educators understand why, they will let you plant moringa trees. And so get them in the parks, in the schools, on government land, down the fence lines, in your backyards, at your churches, any place you can get moringa, get it planted, because at the end of the day, if famine hits and there is no food, if for whatever reason you found yourself among those 200 pastors I told you about in Africa who died during the COVID nightmare because famine hit them, and they and their entire church group and their communities died of famine. That was 25% of this guy's. He had 800 churches. It was down now to 600 churches. They died of famine because of COVID. If they would have had moringa trees, just moringa, they'd still be alive today. None of us know what's coming into our zone. We don't know where it's going to hit. Some of it is nefarious and man-made. Some of it is just going to be natural, but we must be ready. And one of the greatest things you can do is moringa. Now, look at this slide right here. Why moringa? Not only is it a superfood tree of life, nutritional plant for you, and it grows easily in dry or humid, sandy soils. If you get a lot of rain, you'll have to trick it, and I can show you that privately, how to trick moringa to grow for you. But if you're up north and it freezes, you need to get it in a pot and drag it into your garage during winter so that you can preserve that moringa tree. And it will just keep growing and growing, and it'll produce a harvest for you every 45 days for 25 years. But not only is it nutritional, it's also a biostimulant, it's a fungicide, it's a fertilizer, and it's very medicinal. And when all hell breaks loose in the earth, medicines are hard to find. Moringa it really is the tree of life. It's also used for animal fodder. If you have animals, we feed our chickens with moringa. It's a superfood. Our friends feed cattle and pork and all kinds of animals with moringa, and it's powerful in helping to stimulate their growth and make them healthy. It's also an all-natural water treatment. It cleans 99.9% of all bacteria in the water. Now, number 3, star that, highlight that, because this is one of the most important things for me, is to get people into moringa. Well, where do I find the seed? Well, I do know if you're able to order from Amazon and get it shipped over to your country, just order the seed on Amazon. You can buy 5,000 seeds for, well, it used to be $15. Now it's like 30. There's some companies selling for 100. They know there's coming a day where moringa seed will be non-existent. You will not be able to find it. So get it while you can. Once your trees are going, then they will produce seeds for you. If you live in Latin America, there's moringa growing everywhere. Seed is available everywhere. Just dig in and start looking, but make haste and get your moringa in the ground. It takes it 90 to 120 days to get into capacities where you can actually use it. So don't wait until the tsunami or the storm hits and then say, oh, now's a good time to plant moringa. You'll be dead by the time those trees are ready to produce for you. So get them planted today. And even if a monsoon came through and blew every leaf off that moringa tree, it will re-leaf and be ready to supply a harvest in 45 days for you. Okay, harvest a little early, 30 days. But that is something you got to get in your program for the global food revolution. Let me see here. If we have Pastor Dawes, are you on here at all during this time? Pastor Dawes, are you able to unmute and say hello real quick? Hoping you can. Pastor Dawes starts, I'm going to miss this, probably 60 to 150 churches a year in India. He is arming his church planters with food capacity to go out, identify the need, and start growing emergency food. He's doing that work. And there he is, Pastor Dawes. How are you doing today? And thank you for unmuting. Would like you just to say a few words about poverty and food shortage and what you're doing in Africa. In India.
Well, thank you, Dr. Daniel Dave. It has been an amazing journey with you to see what God is doing in Panama. I had the privilege of being with you to see your food growing and processing center. India, of course, is going through a drastic change with the current political scenario. And the church planters are severely persecuted across the country. One of the struggle in many communities, they are being chased out of their places. So food security is something which is at the forefront. If there is food to eat, at least they can live on. So one of the things me and Dr. Daniel were discussing how we could empower and equip our church planters to grow their own food so they could sustain and train and teach the local communities to generate food. That is the vision. So we need to equip these students who are in the Bible school, over 200 of them, young men and women, then impart that vision to them and train and teach them how to grow their own food. Then take that to the villages and communities where they go. It's a platform to share the gospel. When the poor people are in poverty, he could say, hey, there are means and methods and ways you could grow your own food. And they could approach the village administration or the head of the people, the tribes, and say, this is something I have in my hand. That would be an opening for our church planters to be in this hostile situation as a catalyst to bring poverty to an end and prosperity to start. So I'm excited to partner with this global food processing in Providence. Thank you, Dr. Daniel Dev. This is amazing. I'm excited. And some of this wisdom, like moringa, is a plant which naturally grows across the country, but people don't understand its value. So we need to really educate our people.
Amazing. And thank you so much for all that you are doing. You've given your entire life to send church planters throughout India. And time does not allow today to tell all the great things. If anyone here, you ever had an idea to help a church planter after he's been fully trained, he or she, to go into a community and find the Son of Peace, you can help them by supplying a bicycle. I believe, what's the current amount of US dollars per month that one of them needs for support at this time? What is that current amount? I know inflation's hit since we last talked.
Oh yeah, a bicycle would cost maybe $100 to $120 for a bicycle.
And per month for someone to be sponsored to go out into a community that's never heard the gospel before and that is starving?
It's $150.
About $150 a month.
To place a mission or church planter in a field a month. We take care of their rent of the building and to eat and survive in the village.
If I
Yes.
might ask, how many churches per year are you guys currently or church planners sending out?
Well, we train and send over, this year we trained and sent 147 of them. And we sent over 2,400 plus and planted over 5,000 plus churches. When I say churches, house groups, where there
Yes.
were no expression of Christianity across the country.
Excellent,
Yes.
excellent. And these church planners go out to plant a church and train church planners. So it's very infectious, isn't it? And what a time, because real honestly, the global food insecurity problems can be met, but you have to have the love of God in your heart to do it. And because there's no money to be made in solving global hunger and eradicating poverty, men and women with no love in their hearts are not interested in doing it. And so it's always on the back of the Christians to do it. And sure enough, you're sending these guys out to make a change. And my goodness, I'll say this, I know that you have a class, because in India it can be very, very hostile, like you said, politically, and it's very hostile against Christianity right now. And friends, I don't know if any of you have ever been to Bible college, but Pastor Dawes has a class during their Bible college, and that is how to die with dignity for Jesus when they're crucifying you, burning you at the stake. When's the last time we ever signed up for that class? But that's reality in India. Pastor Dawes, talk to me. How many villages are unreached? How many villages do you have in your targets?
As per the Joshua project, there are over 500,000 villages without any form of Christian witness at all in India. Over 500,000 villages, and we were able to reach at least over 5,000 plus of them with the gospel.
I know you're a dreamer, and I know you're a mover and a shaker, and you've got all 500,000 in your heart. You're going after them all.
That's what we are here for. And we say, do or die, church planters. Let's do it. Or if people want to kill us, we are willing to pay our price in that cause.
You see, the church planting and the food security all go hand in hand. It all goes hand in hand because it's not being done. Your educational groups, your religious groups, they're not doing it. It's the political groups, they're not doing it in these communities and villages around the world. And so it is our duty before God to feed the poor. As a matter of fact, if I may just mention this, Jesus said to his disciples after a good day, it had a good webinar, a good webinar, and the disciples said, "It's been a great webinar, Jesus. We had a good time, but hey, it's getting late. We need to send people home so they can go get something to eat. And otherwise they're going to be hungry. It's going to be a real bad day. It's going to turn them, they're going to get mad, and then they're not going to look favorably on the webinar." And Jesus said, "I got an idea. Why don't you feed them?" And they're like, "There's 5,000 men out there. How can we feed them?" And Jesus showed them, "Let me show you how to tap into heaven's resources, the fourth dimension." And folks, that is another thing that we have to look at. When the food disappears, we need to know how to tap into that fourth dimension. I've personally seen it over and over. I've seen the food multiply. I've seen 200 food for 200 feeds 600 2 plates, and all the workers take a big basket home. I've seen all of that. And Jesus said, "Look, let me show you how to tap in to the kingdom of heaven, and that is by feeding those in need." He also said to Peter, "Hey, Peter, you love me?" Said it 3 times. "Jesus, you know I love you. Then you need to get busy feeding my sheep." So this is a call upon every believer, every Christian, non-Christian, whoever you are. We're being called to feed the poor and be ready. And if you do, God himself will help you feed the poor. Thank you, Pastor Dawes, for jumping in there for a minute. 500,000 villages, may they all receive the kingdom, receive a church planner, and receive the help they need to sustain their lives while food insecurity hits. India has over 1 billion people, and no doubt this globalist nightmare group, they want that reduction. They want India, and they have them in their crosshairs, but it's not going to happen on our watch. Not going to happen. Okay, friends, thank you so much. That was my portion of time. I do have also a friend here that let me take a look. I don't think he's made it in yet. No, he hasn't made it in yet. But let me just tell you about him. He is a bishop in the Bahamas. They started with the global food revolution right really on time. If y'all remember, a few years ago, a disastrous Cat 5 hurricane for the first time in history hit the Bahamas and stopped. And it churned for a couple of days, Cat 5, and wiped the whole thing out in the islands of the Bahamas. And then it continued to move forward. Hurricanes don't stop unless they're directed to do so. And so they had no food, no water, nothing, and they were highly motivated. We need to get in the global food revolution. And so this bishop, if he comes on, hopefully we'll get him on just to talk for a moment. But he's got many, many churches all through the Bahamas with their denomination. And they have started a program where I believe it's each church is sponsoring 500 gardens in their community. This is a bullet point, an action plan. So the church is getting the seed together. They're helping. They're doing some little seminars to teach. Here's how you grow tomatoes. Here's how, and they have some people. They've developed their team, and each church has 500 gardens growing. And I do believe that he's in charge of 80 churches. So how many gardens are now growing in the islands of the Bahamas in case of disaster? Because all the food in Bahamas previously was shipped in, was flown in. And when the docks are wiped out and the shores are wiped out and the airports are flooded, no food and no clean water's coming. They also received a great gift from God himself after saying, we're going to do this. Someone stepped up and gave them a water bottling facility, commercial, to be able to bottle water and sell it and give it. But when crisis hits, they will have control of water at the root level, right? And so these are some of the things that happen when you say, yes, here am I will go and I will become a global food revolutionary. So if that bishop shows up here, we'll get him on here a little bit later. But what I'd like to do now, as we rotate into the next piece of this webinar, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. And I've known this man for quite a few years. He is in Panama City, Panama. We are talking about Juan Mario Herrera. And we are so thrilled to be connected at the hip with this man, who is the pastor of Roca de Vida in Panama City. You can find him all over the internet. He's on Instagram, posting all the time, and he's got a rocking church, to say the least. If he wants to tell you a little bit about himself, I can tell you this. He's the best interpreter on planet Earth from English to Spanish. And he's also a man who takes his call serious. While every church in Panama shut down at the direction of the government, he kept his church open. He kept preaching. He kept baptizing. He kept moving forward. He refused to stop going. He took a lot of heat, but because of that heat, God has expanded his authority much, much further than ever before. And I'm so proud of him for standing against tyranny and standing against all the powers and the pressures, not only of, the illicit, now found to be illegal government mandates, but also the antiquated church leadership of the nation was calling him and saying, "You fool, you're disgracing the name of God," whatever else. He was going through it, but he went through the fire, and he has also embraced the global food revolution. His church is on fire for food, and they have plans that I hope he will reveal to us, so that we also, whether it's churches or civic organizations or governments or whatever, that you can also implement these things in your life. And so with that, would love to have you, Pastor Mario, jump on and take over at this time.
Hey,
good to have you.
God bless you all. Thank you. Oh, what an introduction. I feel so humble, It's a pleasure, it's a privilege to be here sharing with all of you, men of God, and to see my brother Das. It's amazing just to hear him and sharing what's going on in India and everything. We've been partnering for a while. Hey, brother, good to see you, man. Love you so much. Thank you, Daniel, for inviting me to be part of this. And well, I won't add much into what you say. It was a bit hard to go through all this pandemic. We call it the pandemia, the pandemic, because we know it was planned. We know we've been, forced to do a lot of things, but praise the Lord, we kept baptizing people, we kept working for the Lord, for the kingdom, and we saw God's, reward, bringing many other people, many new people to God's, to the kingdom. And I just wanted to take this part, I want to share from the pastor's point of view, what are we doing with the global food revolution? How are we implementing this in our church? Because, for years, the duty or the work of a pastor, for many of us, has been preaching and just, looking after people. That's like the traditional job that we think that we have to do. And but now, the Lord is opening our eyes to see that there's more to do, that there's even more to work on. Just as Daniel said a while ago, the Lord told his disciples to go and feed the people. And a few weeks ago, or a few months ago, not that many, Daniel was with us sharing the word in our church, and it challenged us. It challenged us to start feeding people. Like actually going and preparing food and going to the communities and feeding the poor. We're partnering now with orphanages, and because the Bible says, and he reminded us that it says that he is a father for the fatherless, and he is a husband of the widows. So we partner with this orphanage, and we're looking to open that spectrum to reach even more orphanage. Where we're reaching out and doing we're going out and doing evangelism and sharing the word and doing all these things with this less fortunate. And since we started feeding people, since we started going to the communities and bringing food, we have seen what he said. We have the testimonies of the members of the church, seeing the food being multiplied. Not only when we go out and reach out to communities, but also in some activities that we had within the church, like men's group and stuff like that, where we will have food to feed 50 or 60, and we end up feeding 100 people or even more. And so it is true, the Lord will have your back when you start doing what he wants you to do. When we start doing his will on earth, we will see, not only the reward, but we will see him backing up to, or we will see him, fulfilling his word and his promise that he will have us on his hands. And not only he told his disciples, to go and feed the people for 5,000 and then, the 4,000. But when Peter came to him and the Lord asked him, "Do you love me?" 3 times. 3 times the Lord said, "Feed my sheep, feed my sheep, feed my lamb." And there's 2 words that are being there are used there. One is bosco and the other is poimano. And so when we start going through these words, the meaning, we can see that the Lord has ordered us not only to feed spiritually, which most of us do, we preach to the people, we tend to them, we minister to them, we give them studies, but also we're supposed to tend to them, which most of us do, look after them, their marriages, their families, and they grow spiritually. But then we realize that we are also called to feed them in the natural. And we understand that we're not in the business of restaurants or of food distribution, but I do believe that there's a call. The Lord is calling us now, and the signs are there that something is about to happen. And we, as a Church of Jesus Christ, we need to be ready for this. Yes, we have been feeding spiritually, we have been tending the sheep, but now it's going to be the time where we will have to feed them in the natural. And it might not be forever, but it will be for a season while they learn and they start, growing food on their own, so they can be able to sustain themselves, and we can move on and feed other people and do the same, which is an amazing way, not only to look after the sheep, but also to bring new sheep to the herd, to bring new people to the feet of Christ. Because, which community is going to close their doors to you, or where is that going to, if you're bringing the word with food and with help? They're used to hear the word, but also being asked of things, money and resources and things like that. So when you actually come not only with the word, but with assistance and help and food, it is a different thing. Because unfortunately, I don't know in your countries, but here in Latin America, they're used to churches taking from them and not bringing to them. And this is a dynamic that we need to change, because we're here to help, not to take from people, But you know how it is all over the world. So we do believe that this is a time the Lord is calling us to a new phase, or a new season in our work as spiritual leaders, where we will have to be more involved in the physical part of feeding the people, feeding the sheep, or at least helping them to stand up or to learn how to walk, to be able to feed themselves. We know, the world all over is talking about famine. They're talking about scarcity. They're talking about, that there won't be enough food soon for everybody. And we know that this is not happening naturally. We know that we have the resources, we have the technology, we have the land, we have everything to be able to produce enough food for the whole world. But we know that the enemy is he's stepping up, he's accelerating his plans, and he wants to reduce world population. He wants to take out people, and he wants to take out the church. So we need to step up. We need to be ready. We need to have the discernment and the wisdom from God to be able to face the years that are coming, and to be able to survive, not just because we want to be alive, but because we have a duty to do. We have to survive to keep on preaching the word of God. People need to hear the gospel. The Bible says that when the gospel is here to the last place on earth, then he will come. And if we don't do our part, there's a lot of people praying, Jesus come, Jesus come, Jesus come. And our answer is like, are you preaching the gospel? Are you reaching those that need to be reached for him to come? Because what are you doing for that? It's not enough for us just to gather together and to have a vigil, all night prayer meeting, and to ask Maranatha, Lord, please come. There's a job that we need to do. So, I'm pretty sure Daniel talked about this, but this is the time of the sons of Issachar, and what does that mean? That means that it's not enough just to know the season that we're living on, but we need to know what to do on this season. You can find that in the Bible in 1 Chronicles 12:32. The sons of Issachar, they did not only knew the season that they were going through, but they knew what to do. And this is something that we need to copy. We need to understand what we should do on this time, because there will be a time where there won't be food in the supermarket, no matter how much money you have in your pocket, no matter how much resources you might have, no matter how powerful your church or ministry or your community is. There will be a time where you will have to go to the supermarket and you will find nothing on the shelves. And then what are we going to do? So we need to get ready for this. We need to be ready for this time. In Luke 12, 54, 56, then Jesus said, then he also said to the multitudes, whenever you see a cloud rising out of the west, immediately you say a shower is coming. And so it is. And when you see the south wind blow, you say there will be hot weather. And there is. Hypocrites, how you can discern the face of the sky and of the earth, and how is that you did not discern this time. And I do believe that this word is also for today. We need to discern the times that we're living. When we have people from the world, worldly people, secular, and even, not only secular, people who actually worship Satan, telling us that there's a famine coming, that there's going to be a lack of food, that there's going to be a very, very hard times ahead. We need to set up. We need to do something, to find the strategies where we're going to be able not only to provide for us and our family, but for our church. People are looking up to us. They're looking at their pastors, they're looking at their leaders. That we have the wisdom and we have the guidance from the Lord to take them through this hard season. Of course, with the Lord, but what are we going to do? I think it's time to start preaching and teaching about what's going to happen, which all is in the Bible. This is all fulfilling prophecies from the Bible, and get them ready for the seasons that are coming. So how are we doing this? How does this looks in the natural? Because we can talk about this for a long time, but if we don't get the tools, or if we don't put it on the ground, or we don't put it on paper and start doing it, then it's useless. So for us, the Lord has given us the following direction or instructions. What we are doing right now, we start doing a land inventory in our church. There's many members that, believe it or not, they have a patio, they have a piece of land, might not be that big, or some of them have even farms. So we start doing this inventory of land for the members of the church to know, what we count with, what resources do we have at hand. And the idea is that if we have the inventory, if we know the amount of people that have land in our church, we can help them. We were thinking right now, we're in the process of hiring a what's it called? It's an engineer that works with land, is an agricultural engineer, people who are specialized in producing food and seeds and all this. And so in this way, they might have the land, but they don't know how to make it, produce food. So we are partnering with these engineers that will go and will visit their land, and they will advise on what's the best crop to grow in those places. Once we have that, then we can go ahead and we start trying to help them on the purchase of seed, because we know that when we buy seeds, if we buy them by large amounts, we can get a better price on those seeds, on whatever we need, to help them to produce their food. So this is part one: identifying who has land. How can we help them for them to start producing food, and start working in that area. Then the second part, we already started reaching out to the producers, to those who are actually producing the food themselves. And they're, I don't know how it works in your country, but I think it's very similar to Panama. They might produce melons or watermelons, and they will sell the watermelon for 50 cents. But when you go to the supermarket, you end up paying $2 for the same watermelon, or $5 or $6 or $7. So we started reaching out to the food producers, the people who are there on the field, and we explained them what we were doing. Hey, we're a church. We have a community of people, and we want to buy directly from you. We're trying to make it in volume, amounts that are of food that are attractive to them to sell to us at a wholesale price. Of course, that involves setting up all the structure and the logistics to be able to bring that food to the city or to whatever we are, and then bring it to the people's homes. For us, that we have meetings throughout the week. We have about 400 people a week coming to church, every Sunday and Wednesday. It's not that difficult because they have to come to church. So for us, it's easier to organize, for them coming and picking up whatever, getting the deliver on the days just when we have the service of the day before. So when they come, they can take their food and take it home. So yeah, that's one of the things we're working on. We're setting up all the structure to be able to distribute this food, so our members can get cheaper food. The producers can get a benefit, because the truth is that sometimes, like, they will sell to us even a bit more expensive than what you find it in like normal wholesale price. But that price that they're giving to us, it's way cheaper than what you find in the supermarket. So for them, it's attractive because they're not getting ripped off by the middleman. We're paying better price for their products, and at the same time we're getting a great discount and big benefit. And that allows us not only to bring food to the table of the members of the church, but also it helps us reach the community, because this is not only for the church. While we're doing this, people who have cell groups, home churches and stuff like that, they can talk to the neighbors, they can talk to the members of the home group, and they say, hey, listen, at the church, we're getting cheap vegetables, cheap produce, this and that, and so you're bringing food to more people, which help us in bringing volume when we make the purchase to get a better price. And also it helps us to establish because it's like a wheel. You need to start to make the wheel, it has to start turning. So this helps us to do this. We're starting small, but sooner or later we know we're going to be distributing food not only for the church members but also for people throughout our communities. That help us to bring the word of Christ, and that help us also whenever they plan on locking us up, which is coming again. We are able to move freely, because whoever is involved with this primary jobs or primary industries, or especially food distribution, you're free to move around. You get a permit where you can go and drive around, and that helps us, going to people's homes, pray for them, sharing the word, and all these things the Lord has commanded us to do. So first, as I say, do an inventory of land where we can help members of the church who have land to start producing food with their land. Help them with whatever they need. They might need seed. They might need advice, professional advice, whatever they need. Help them. For example, we went a few times to our brother Daniel's farm. We saw what he's doing there. We saw how he's producing his own food for the soil, or he's even producing his own soil. So this is all important. Because we know fertilizers are very expensive. The price has gone up, exponentially. And so doing all this, being able to produce our own fertilizer, organic fertilizer, compost, all these things, help us bring, the food costs lower. And also it help us produce better quality of food. So we are in that time right now where we're doing the inventory, where we're partnering with this advisors and everything to be able to set up our members who have land to produce their own food. Of course, there's a deal here, or there's some sort of agreement. You're going to be producing whatever you're going to be producing, but on the Bible it talks about the tithe, tithing. and people used to tithe 10% of whatever the ground or the land will give to them. So we're back to the same, they will tithe out of whatever they're producing, and that food that is being tied to the church will help us maybe distribute to people who don't have land right now, or who are lacking of food, or we can donate it to the orphanage, or we can even sell it for a good price. So will help us, sustain the system of what we're doing right now, all this project. And last but not least, we're also in the process of purchasing land. The church we're looking out for land. We're looking for land where we can produce our own food. We realize that there's a lot of people who want to buy land, but might not have a large amount of money. So what we decided is that we came all together, all the people who went to Daniel's farm, all of those were aligned with the vision of going out and starting to produce our own food. So we decided that as a church, we're going to purchase a piece of land. And because land might not be that cheap, whatever, it depends where you are. And we realize that our members of church who have some money available or want to be part of it, but might not have the amount of money that it's required to buy a whole farm by yourself. So what we did is that we brought them all together and we say, okay, how much money do you plan to invest? How much money do you want to invest? So we are looking for a piece of land that will be large enough where everybody can put in whatever the money they have, and you will get a title for that amount of land that you're purchasing. If you have $2,000, you get $2,000 worth of land where you can, of course, there's an agreement that land will be used specifically to produce food. And you might say, well, but not everybody knows how to produce food. That's true. But there's so many people in your church, there's so many talents, and there's so many people who are out of a job that say, you know what, Pastor, I don't have the money to buy land, but I know how to produce food. So I will go and I will put my work. And out of that work, you will get a little piece of land, or you will be able to work on some other families' land, and you will get a part of that. So the whole church will be involved in this. The whole church will be aligned with the vision, and wherever we buy this land, of course, our idea as a church is to set up a center there, dorms where we can receive missionaries. Also to set up like a little area where we can do worship, because of course the idea is not only to have a farm and to grow food so we can sell, so we can donate, so we can give to our members of the church, but also to reach the community where we're going to set up that land, because all around there's communities that need to hear the gospel. So while we're there producing food, at the same time where they're reaching out to that community, where they're preaching the gospel, where they're holding services and bringing missionaries so they can replicate this system in their countries, and at the same time they can come and they can go and share the gospel in areas that are very remote in our country that need to hear the word. At the same time, we might even be able to those communities that we're reaching out to help them to learn or to teach them how to produce food in whatever land they have, so they can be self-sustainable. Our idea is to not only, set up our farm, but help others to grow their food. We can even buy the excess produce they have, or donate it, or whatever. The Lord is giving us all these ideas, and we are working on that. We're walking in this direction. So whatever is going to happen, we know that the people of God will be able to go through this famine or this test, this time of trial, and we will be victorious. We will be successful preaching the gospel, reaching out to the lost, and at the same time being able to sustain ourselves while this happens.
Pastor Mario, one thing that as you were speaking, I have thought many times of, and I've shared this in different conferences around, that this is a day to convert home groups into Joseph outposts, wherever, whether it's a home group in a neighborhood, or whatever authority your group has, church or civic organization, whatever, that this is the time, as you said, you're setting up distribution.
Yeah.
And in the food world, it's my understanding as an entrepreneur that that grocery stores make usually between 20 and 35% profit on food items. Well, if you set that up in your church or with your little outposts or your home groups, some people say, I don't have any money to give food away. Well, if your entire church group saved 30% on the food bill, you've got 30% more food that you now can give away. It's an amazing thing. We have to change. We got to revolutionize the way we're thinking. Most of us, we just go to the store, we buy it. We don't even think about the hierarchy of what is the real cost of this food. And the closer to the root level we get, the cheaper the food gets. When you come to, you come to my farm, my price is going to be different than when you go to the grocery store in Panama City that's selling that same kale or whatever it is that we grow, that everyone gets a markup price. But when under that command that I received, and I know that you're operating in this and many others are as well, seize control of food at the root level, you're working your way right down to distributors and farmers. And with your group that's moving towards buying a piece of land, what a concept. Okay, well, I can't afford a piece, but we can afford a piece. We can. So this is the time of the community. This is the time to step up. The community comes together and we do it together. I love what you're saying and what you guys are doing there. Amazing. So you have seen already then a reduced price, and some of this food then is now coming to the church services.
Yes.
And your people are able to move it back or into their own homes.
Yes, we are right now. We're purchasing some fruit. We have a person that actually was involved in distributing food, so we put him in charge of this program. And for example, he reached to me and he said, Pastor, we have some producers that are they're producing watermelon, and they're selling us a bag of watermelon. We call it here quintal for $12-15, and we have another that offer us for $8, where he found out it was for the church. And a quintal has 25 watermelons. So buying 25 watermelons for $8 here in Panama, that's when normally you buy one watermelon for $2, $3, $4, $6, even $8 for one. So when you bring 25, you can sell them for $1, and you have $25, and you only paid $8 for this. So yeah, we are seeing a huge save on the prices of the food. We have, now we're teaching the church, educating them to be organized and to, order, because the idea is that you pre-order. We tell this guy, hey, okay, for next week we're going to need 100 pounds of cassava, yuca, or jam, or potatoes. And so he can go and he can do the purchase. And when he comes, everything is sold already. We might have a little bit extra, for those who forgot, or those who didn't hear what was going on, or those who want a little bit more. But the save, the amount of money the people are saving, it's crazy. And they're getting fresh food straight from the farm. And at the same time, we're able to sustain what we're doing, because we can add a little bit of profit, which is going to be just to pay for the gas, to maybe give an offering to this man, because whoever is working, he's worth of a salary, because we're creating jobs at the same time. On the home churches or home groups, if people can have this food and bring it to the communities, each house, each home church becomes a little market, a little distribution place, and they can have they can earn a little bit of money out of this. We understand that we're not after this for profit. We're not after becoming rich doing this. If it lives enough just to sustain what we're doing, and it can give a little bit of money, to pay for some bills or something for the person doing it, we're doing it for the Lord. We're doing it to bring the word, of Jesus Christ, whatever the Lord sends us. But if at the same time we can make a little bit of money out of this to sustain some of the things we're doing, hey, come on, what a blessing. So yeah, that's what we're working on. We're buying watermelons, we're buying melons, we're buying cassava, we're buying ginger, we're starting with all these things that take a while, to go bad or to spoil. So then we can start working with fresh produce and stuff like that. But that's how we're working. We've been doing it for the last month. And so far, people in the church, each day they get more involved when they see the amount of money they're saving from going to the supermarket. You can see how the support is growing and growing and growing.
Pastor Mario, my hat is off to you. What a noble movement, because just the fact that you're getting ahead of the curve, another lockdown, disaster hits, whatever, you guys, you're paying the price in advance. You're preparing and getting ready. And I guarantee you, the guy that doesn't get ready, he doesn't build the ark or the community. When the grocery store shelves are empty, he's not going to know who to go to. So I'm going in to get some yucca, and there's no yucca. Who's the yucca guys? There are no yucca guys. You're never going to find them, especially if you're locked down.
No.
But you guys have established these connections at the root level, and God's going to reward you for it. My hat's off too that you guys are able to bank some of that money to help pay, because it's hard work. Food distribution and food growing and all of that is hard work. Whoever's got their hand to that plow needs to be compensated some way. And that, we can give it all of it. We can give that all away in the day of disaster when the neighborhood is in trouble and going hungry. That's when we give it away.
Yeah.
That's when we do it. Until then, we have to sustain and keep the lights on and sustain the operation. And so you guys are slam dunking it. I'm so happy, so proud.
Even though we add a little, some percentage, it's still way cheaper than what they find at the supermarket or the local market or whatever, So everybody's it's a win-win. And not only that, let's remember that if the producers, which is happening in Panama, the government is not having their backs. The government is turning it back to them. If they don't sell what they produce, they go bankrupt and they just stop producing food. So it's also a way to help them get rid of whatever they have, at a fair price, so they can keep on putting seed on the ground. Otherwise, because that's the thing, they want to bring the producers to a point where they won't even be able to put seed on the ground because it's they won't make any money out of it. They're broke. So there's a lot going on here. We're helping the producer. They know it's for a church, so most of the time, they will give you good food. They will give you a great price because they feel awesome that they're helping. And at the same time, they're being helped. Here at church, people are proud. They want to be part of it, and they know this is to bring the word of Christ. This is for them also a benefit because they're saving money on the food they're buying. So there's no way. Actually, this is a win-win situation for everybody. Everybody is getting something out of it. Of course, the kingdom is advancing. The name of God is being glorified, which is the main thing to do. And we're just using the wisdom that God gave us, a lot of it through you, Daniel, and we're just putting it to work, for the kingdom.
Pastor Mario, I might mention during COVID, the lockdown, when that all happened, we just needed to lock down for a couple of weeks to level the curve, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And but here's the fact: what a lot of people didn't realize, when we locked the world down, the farmers were 50% more or less of farmer produce was going to the restaurant and commercial world. So when we locked down and shut down all restaurants, the farmers had no place to move their produce to. Yeah. And so the farmers started going broke because of the lockdown. We, from our point, we were taking pickup trucks down and we were loading 1,200 pounds a day and distributing everywhere we could in our area, but we were getting deep wholesale discounts on the produce. The farmers were giving it away just to try to stay alive and not have to shutter their farms. If this happens again, they could just, as you said, just stop growing food and say, we're done. Just plow it under. We're not going to go through this again. We were buying, we were buying $40 sacks of potatoes for $9. Buying, $40 sack of carrots, 50 pounds for $8. I mean, and we were buying $5, yucca and all of that, $5, $6 for 50 pounds. My heart went out because the farmers were giving it away. They clearly were not, making enough money to pay the employee just to bag it and put it on the truck and drive it down. They were losing money like crazy. Then in Panama, because of our high costs of gasoline and food and all of that, Panama went into a revolt and shut the whole country down for 40 days, where there was no gasoline, no food moved. You remember that? Our farm was on, after 40 days, we were on our last, our last tank of fuel. And thank God that thing broke. But if it would have gone on another 20 days, our farm would have been out of business. We would have been stopped, couldn't even have driven free food out. And so when all of that happened, many of the farms through Panama shuttered, let their employees go, fired the employees, stopped growing, which then 100 days later, after that revolt, resulted, we had no potatoes. All potatoes had to be imported. Rice production, we're in trouble with rice. We're in trouble again with rice. And on it goes. The producers had to shut down because they had the food, but they couldn't get it down the road because of revolt and lockdowns of the highways. We don't know what tragedy or lockdown or how a nation is going to shut down. We don't know for sure how that's going to happen. We just have to be ready. And thank God you've got a distribution growing and set in place so that if whatever happens, you guys have control at the root level. Thank God for that.
Amen.
Anything else that you can think of that you would recommend people to do, either a housewife, a mom, home level, or at a church or a community level?
Sure. There's a lot of some people might say, well, I don't have a farm, or I don't have a big piece of land. But if you go into YouTube, you can see there's so many urban gardens. There's so many ways to produce food in your balcony, in the back of your house, wherever you live. There's always a way to produce food. So we have to be grateful, and we're so blessed that we have all these internet tools like YouTube and all these channels where you can go and whatever you want to grow. There's people growing so much food right now on rooftops in Thailand, in New York, in places where there's no farms around, and they're using rooftops to grow food. You might use a sack and fill it with soil or dirt and put some cassava, yucca in there, and the yucca will grow. Potatoes, all sorts of things. So I think this is a time to pray for God for the signs, exclusive, special signs from heaven. He will give you the wisdom. He will give us the resources. The point is that we need to start producing food right now, and we need to start teaching others how to do it. Hey, there's in your church, I know there are people who have land. I know brothers can come together and start working on a piece of land. They can, hey, let's do this. Let's plant some eggplant or some tomatoes and some onions or whatever, depending on the weather where you are at. And at the end of the harvest, you have several families that can be fed from there. As you say, you need how many acres to feed 2,000 people. So if you want to feed a family of 6 or 12 people, 2 families, you don't need that much land actually, and you can produce a lot of different food. This is a time to be praying on that direction, to be asking God for wisdom and for the resources, and it's not expensive at all to do this. And hey, internet has so much wisdom and so much information on all of this that if you don't do it, It's just, I don't want to be standing in front of God and say, God, I died of hunger. And he's like, come on, son, really? I gave you the wisdom. I sent you the people. I sent you everything you needed. And, you just need to get hands on dirt, get your hands dirty a little bit and you'll see.
That's great. Amen. Amen. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Thank you so much for all that you guys are doing. And if all of you would like to connect with Pastor Mario, there's his information once again. Connect up and especially get on that Instagram page. They're posting all the time and wonderful, wonderful stuff there. And we really, really thank you, sir. Look forward to seeing you soon. And we appreciate you dropping in. I know your time is very precious. It looks to me like you are in the television recording studio right there. Is that right?
Yeah, we're in the studio right now, the church studio, where we do a lot of live streaming and we produce a lot of content. We're going to start producing a lot of content for Darien, for the province of Darien, for the radio station, for Brother Jason. We're sending their, content for the youth. We're going to start producing some financial advices also for the people there, because there's people who really need some finance wisdom, financial wisdom from the kingdom. Women content, all this sort of things, but yeah, we're in the studio right now.
Well, it's a beautiful studio. I walked in there and I just started salivating. I was, oh my goodness, this is the dream. So thank you again, sir, for being with us today. And we sure appreciate it. Would you be willing to pray for us, pray for the whole group here, just for God's wisdom and whatever the Lord leads you?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Father, we thank you for the privilege and the blessing that we have right now, being all together, listening to all this and learning, God, about all this, the signs that you're giving us to your people, to your church. I pray, Lord, that in the following days and the rest of today, your Holy Spirit will remain teaching us and giving us the wisdom and the ideas that come straight from your heart. Our idea is not just to survive. Our idea is, Lord, to do your will while we are on earth. We know we have a duty toward you and to your church, and we want to fulfill this duty and this purpose that you have given to us, Lord, in the right way. So I pray, God, that you will send the resources, you will send the wisdom, you will give us, God, whatever we need to fulfill this that you're calling us to do. There are times that will come that won't be easy, but we know, Lord, that we are already successful and victorious on your name. In Jesus' mighty name, I pray, God. Amen and amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. We sure appreciate you. God bless you.
Take care.
Okay, sure. Super. Well, friends, we've got our third speaker today, which is going to, I believe is going to rock our world. My friend, Phil Phillips. And let me get his slide. There we are. Phil Phillips is with God Loves Kids. He is the owner of one of the only certified organic farms in the nation of Panama, Finca Santa Marta. And Phil has gone through the fire in Panama. Growing food is like walking through fire. And Phil's been here in our area. We've been good friends for quite a while. And the great news with Phil is that he comes with a long organic history of also feeding children all over the world, including throughout the continent of Africa and Uganda. And I think that you're really going to like Phil, because Phil, he's got the boots on the ground experience. If you need to say, talk to me, someone tell me what to do, Phil's the guy. He's going to tell you what to do, from planting emergency food and A, B, C, D, E. This is the guy. Phil, I need you just to unmute yourself if you would. And sure, glad having you. I believe you are in Panama today. Whoops, we're still muted. There you are.
Paul had any technical difficulties.
Yes. Phil, are you in Panama today?
Yes, I'm in Boquete, Panama.
Okay, super. Well, welcome to the webinar today, and thank you for bringing your decades of wisdom to the table today. We're so thrilled to have you here. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. I found today to be quite inspirational. And so if I can come from the other direction and give some more practical information, how do we do this? I was challenged in my own life and ministry. I came from, before I went into ministry at 18 years of age, I was actually trained in agriculture. 4 years of agriculture in 3 in my high school. It was quite a story. I won't get into it. Then basically went away from the idea of doing agriculture for a living, started studying for the ministry, and then became an author at 23 years of age. And my first book went to number 2 on the Christian bestsellers list, and then I subsequently wrote 11 more books in 11 years. And in that time, everything is focused on the benefit of children. And then in 2010, I had the opportunity to join God Loves Kids, the organization that my mother started 50 years ago. And I joined them, eventually became the vice president and now the president of God Loves Kids. Between 2020 and 2014, God Loves Kids educated, fed, and clothed 7,000 children a day. That made us one of the largest child sponsorship programs in the world. Not the largest. There's plenty that were bigger than us, but we did it with 0 advertising dollars. So it was quite a feat, and my mom and dad laid that huge foundation. But in 2014, we visited all of our locations in India and Nepal. Now we had locations in Africa that we visited later, but in one 33-day trip, we went to Nepal and all of our locations in India. The mother organization that my mom originally set out to help had become so successful that when the founder of that organization died, more people came to his funeral than came to Mother Teresa's. They were the number 2 purchaser of rice in the nation of India. The only people who bought more rice than this organization was the Indian Army. And of course, that's done with tax dollars. And I started to really see the fallacy of how the Christian community had really kind of missed the boat here. Here, this organization had been wildly successful and truly beneficial. They had feeding programs, they had schools that we were involved in, orphanages, those type of things. They had their own bank, they had the office building, they had they built a hospital, one of the first Christian-based hospitals in India. And so there's absolutely no complaint, but they were holding their hand out to North America, to Canada, to Europe, to Asia, and saying, help us feed the poor. And they would receive cash, and they would take that cash down, and they would buy even food at wholesale, and then they would feed the poor. And 3 days later, they had no cash, they had no food, and the poor were hungry. Did you hear me? They had no cash, they had no food, and the poor were hungry. So the process has to start all over again. We were buying food every 3 days for 7,000 children. And when I finished this trip, I set out and said, look, to every location, I don't care what kind of location you're in, I don't care what your circumstances are, we will start growing our own food. We will start doing something at this point to become more self-sufficient in our locations. And so different locations had different issues. They had different different things that were eaten by the children, not eaten by the children, different weather patterns. So we were facing this all over the world. And that's exactly what happened. We started growing our own food. And then in Africa and Uganda, we were challenged to consolidate all of our ministry in Africa in one location. And we wound up buying a school campus in Lutembe, Uganda. And Lutembe was one of the few areas that our ministry felt a need to really impact the community. When we bought the school, it was owned by radical Muslims. The imam had been arrested for kidnapping children and sending them to terrorist training camps. And so the imam that was left was simply in it for the money. And the school had been foreclosed on by the bank. And if you know anything about Islam, they're not supposed to borrow money. But they had borrowed money for this school campus, and we purchased it. But we felt like because this community was predominantly Islamic or occultist, there was a large witchcraft community in Lutembe, or they were middle-class, very affluent people who had moved into that community for a view of the lake. And so you had this community of 2,000, 400 or 500 of which were solid middle upper class people who had built their houses up the hills away from the impoverished. The road that the school was on, if you went to the other side of the road, people were living like they would have lived 200 years ago. No running water, no electricity, no inside plumbing, nothing, on dirt floors. Lutembe was a food desert. It had 2 stores that sold predominantly junk food. And we find these deserts all over the world. We find them on islands. Islands are beautiful. We, as North Americans, we dream of going on vacations to islands. And as long as you're looking at the water, it's a paradise. But when you start looking at the interior of an island, many times there's large slums, large impoverished populations, undernourished populations. We went to an island here in Panama. They call it the Lonely Island, 2,000 people, considered to be overpopulated. And we were supposedly the first gringos there in 2 years. And what I saw was a very well-organized island, much more organized than the ones that had been visited by tourists a lot, very clean. There was some leadership on that island that was doing a good job. There was even some small gardens, which was amazing because the other islands did not necessarily have those small gardens. But one of the interesting things that I saw was a 120-foot long block wall. And I'm looking at this island, and you see, if you're impoverished, an island is a prison. If you can't get off and you can't go anywhere and you can't grow your own food, or you're not growing your own food, then that island becomes a prison. It becomes a prison for your children. It becomes a prison for yourself. So I was looking at a group of people that had houses paid for. They didn't need cars. They weren't getting taxed as such. They had dugout canoes, or they were saving for a boat. And of course, in every situation, there are different levels of economic success, no matter where you're at. They had an ultimate source of protein being the ocean. They were eating plenty of protein, but predominantly the rest of the food that this island was eating was junk food supplied by the big commercial food companies, or beans and rice. So if you're spending every penny you make on commercialized food, beans and rice, and then junk food and sugared drinks, one of the things that we saw among the children is a complete lack of nutrition. Even though they were eating, even though they looked like they had been fed, they were lacking in vitamins and minerals, and basic nutritional needs were not being met in those children's lives. And yet I'm looking at this island going, on that 120-foot block wall, we could do a vertical garden made of recycled plastic bottles, thrown away rope, and a couple of drain pipes, some drain pipes. We could grow 800 to 1,000 plants every 30 linear feet. And that one wall alone would revolutionize the food source for that community. Now, I don't need 2,000 people involved in setting up a vertical garden or maintaining a vertical garden. I need a few people to do that. And if I can give them a profit motive, look, you can sell this, to your neighbors, to your friends. Everything works better if somebody's making a little bit of money out of the deal. Profit is not a bad word. It simply means that you've helped somebody do something that they weren't willing or not capable of doing themselves. And so by helping you, you then help me to provide for my family, to pay the electric bill, to do those things. It's not a bad word. Entrepreneurialism is not a bad word. Capitalism has gone amok. And I'm not pro-socialist or anything like that, but the big companies and the big have become in many cases evil, and companies that produce baby formula and then convince whole nations that it's not good to breastfeed a baby so that they can sell baby formula. Those type of things are just evil. And we need to face the fact that we've made some mistakes over the years by trusting some of these companies, by allowing them to do their own thing, particularly in Central and South America. There's a strong history of our government being involved in food, to the level of the director of the CIA controlling a lot of the food distribution in this country. And food production, what left the country as far as exports, and a lot of manipulation has gone on in our countries by our government. I don't want to get political, but the fact is politics affect food. That's all there is to it. We produce 2,800 calories a day for every man, woman, and child in the worldwide. 2,800 calories a day are in production, but because of corruption, because of man-made causes, war and all these things. Let's forget the environment for a second. Most of desertification of the world happens because man has abused the planting process and not worked with nature, but worked against it. So a lot of the negative impacts that we have in the world, we caused. We allowed corruption, and corruption is the cancer of the world. Corruption will kill the world if it's allowed to take its natural progression. And so we are fighting corruption by providing food, by growing food. Food is a rebellion. To grow food, and man, growing food is like printing your own money. If you can learn to grow food, you might as well have a printing press in your backyard, printing $100 bills. So if I could show people, look, here's 100 chickens and they cost you $100 when they're babies, and you've got some upfront costs right up here. But when you get it all settled out and you learn how to deep bed these chickens, and you learn how to put these chickens on compost and get some grub buckets going and maybe a little black soldier fly action going, I can show you how to produce the tastiest, almost practically organic egg for easily less than 3 cents a piece. You're printing money. Now, you may only get 70 eggs a day out of 100 chickens as opposed to 100 eggs a day because you're force feeding them grain. But we just learned that the grain companies providing chicken feed weren't doing a great job. They were putting stuff in that chicken feed they shouldn't have been. So we have all these issues. We have all these things going on. We were working with it. And to make a long story short, we introduced a program we call Microfarms for Families in Lutembe. We introduced it about a year before COVID hit. And that program and our emergency distribution of food prevented 1,500 people from starving to death, and in a very real way. And what was going on in Lutembe was vastly different than what was going on in any other community in that general area. When the government stepped in and the government was helping people were getting sacks of beans with rocks in them. So you had about 60% beans, 40% rocks given out. So they weighed this about the same, but the government was constantly being corrupt. There were only 17 cases of COVID in Uganda when they shut Uganda down. 17 cases, and most of those were truck drivers coming in across the border. Why did they shut down? Because the president of Uganda said, I want $5 billion worth of foreign aid. And until I get my $5 billion, I'm gonna freeze my population and do exactly what they've told me to do to get my $5 billion. Okay, but Uganda didn't have the issue with COVID because they were taking hydroxychloroquine and what's the other medication they were taking it like crazy.
Ivermectin. Yeah,
Ivermectin.
that's
They were
standard
taking
over there. Yeah.
hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin like water. It was cheap. They were taking it for the prevention of malaria. And so we didn't have the kind of issues with illness, but we had people starving to death because the government shut things down. And so where would we begin? Well, first of all, I love hearing all the things I'm hearing, particularly among the church in Panama. It's wonderful, and that's exciting. But at some point, we need to encourage the people in our church to grow their own food at some level or another. Now, and they need to start now. They don't need to start a year from now. They don't need to start 2 years from now. Why? Because it's not easy. It's not easy to learn the information. It takes a lot of, I'm trying to help by, bringing it all together and dissimulating and breaking down, making it as easy as possible, but it's still not easy. If you've never grown your own food, you don't know. You can't just throw some seeds in the ground and expect to get a harvest. You better understand how nature works. You better understand. And I'm constantly learning myself. I'm constantly practicing new things. We're proverbially throwing the noodle against the wall to see if it'll stick. And to try to do something that is sustainable. I'm certified by the Texas Organics Association, but when we did organics in Texas, we called Living Earth Technologies and said, deliver me a semi-truckload of compost, deliver me a semi-truckload of lava sand, deliver me a semi-truckload of green sand. Oh, I need native shredded hardwood mulch done at a specific size. Deliver me a semi-truckload of that. Oh, now I need seaweed emulsion and fish emulsion, and I need apple cider vinegar, and I need this, and I need that, and Amazon and the stores, and it was being delivered to your door. You can't do that here, and you can't do that most places in the world. So how do we do something that is sustainable, that is easy and cheap? You're not spending vast amounts of money on fertilizers. You're not spending vast amounts of money on amendments, because every dollar you spend on that amendment keeps you from experiencing the 30, 60, 100-fold effect. We want to make that small investment and reap a harvest of 30, 60, or 100-fold. Okay, that way we're printing money. That way we're changing. The goal of Finca Santa Marta is not to give everything away. The goal of Finca Santa Marta is to sell as much as humanly possible to pay the bills. We're not even paying the bills yet, but to sell as much as humanly possible to pay the bills, pay the salaries, to buy whatever equipment we need, to buy the fuel, all those things, and then have even more food left that we give away. That's the goal. And to give the excess away, which is biblical. You allow the people to glean the corners of your fields. You leave food out there. So 20, 30% excess growth. So if people are growing their own food now, and they take 20 or 30% of what they grow and they give it away to the poor or the hungry, and then they take an additional 20% because they're working toward food sovereignty. They take an additional 20%, they rope it off and say, we're not going to harvest this. We're going to allow this to grow until we can harvest seed from it. So you're eating 50% of what you're planting. You're harvesting seed from 20%, and you are giving away 20 or 30% of what you're growing on average. That's your food envelope system. You know, I'm putting seed in the ground. I'm going to harvest seed. You know, I'm going to give food away to the poor and the needy so that I'm operating in God's system, and I'm going to eat. I'm going to enjoy the benefits of my labor. My children are going to enjoy the benefits of our labor, and we're going to be healthy. We had one woman in Lutembe really take our Micro Farms for Families program serious. She has just finished a rabbit hutch to house 300 rabbits. And you know, they had no problem eating during the shutdown because they had moringa and they had rabbits and they had 2 small raised bed gardens, and her children were doing the majority of the work on this food production. So it wasn't something she had to work every day. And the other alternative to that was to send her kids to the rock quarry to work 8 hours a day breaking rocks for $1. And that's what majority of children in that community do. They go to the rock quarry, they break rocks 8 hours a day for $1 so they can buy $1 worth of food that day and their family can eat. That's what little kids do in the community of Lutembe, Uganda. Okay, so by educating, by feeding, by clothing, by educating them and by educating their families, we bring transformation to that community where it's no longer a food desert, but it becomes a food oasis in that community. Islands can become a food oasis. That island that we looked at here in Panama could become an exporter of food from that island. There was plenty of resources there. So if we learn how to make soil, if we learn how, you know, if we do all these different things that are very practical. Let's look at the island for a second. You have on that island, you have sand, you have coconuts, you have fish, and you have seaweed. Mixed properly and you know, harvesting coconut core, so you're actually consuming the meat of the coconut, you're consuming the liquid of the coconut, but you take that coconut shell and you shred it up, and that becomes your coconut core. By taking the fish that you're not eating and mixing it with sugar of some kind, raspadura here or horticulture level molasses, 50-50, and allowing it just to sit to become a fish emulsion. Your seaweed, the same thing. You can use your dry seaweed, or you can make an emulsion out of your seaweed, and your sand. You mix those things together and you give it a little time, all of a sudden you have soil starting. Okay. And then, so that's an idea of, hey, we have everything on this island necessary to be the basis or the foundation for creating food on this island instead of waiting for it to arrive in a package. And I've spent all my money that I made on food that arrives in a package that is really poison, a lot of it. So I'm going to feed my family poison instead of something healthy that's grown on the island. You have transportation costs, you have all kinds of issues with, and the minute the supply chain goes down, the first people affected are those islanders, the minute the supply chain goes down. So it's, you know, it's a concern for me. A lot of our work is on islands, and people, oh, well, that's a beautiful place you're at. Yes, but let's turn our face inwards and let's see the slum built on side of a dammed up mangoes grove, swamp, and they've created one of the world's worst slums built on top of a human sewer. That's the type of thing we've faced in the past. So what would I do if I were sitting in my home in Panama, or sitting in majority of people that we're dealing with in this seminar are living on the equator at some level or another. And so what would I do if I had a little bit of land, just a little bit of land, and I'm at home? if I don't have land, I'm going to look at vertical gardens. I'm going to look at containers. I'm going to look at all kinds of other ways to grow. You should be growing food of some kind in your home. Now, very beginning, I'm going to be buying cheap seed at the grocery store, lentils, beans, all kinds of things that I can sprout, seeds that I can sprout. Because if I take seeds and I sprout them, that's a 5-day effort. Okay, so I've taken a seed, I've used water, I've used a little bit of understanding of how nature works, and I've sprouted it. All of a sudden, I've exponentially increased the nutrition, and I've exponentially increased the protein that I'm gaining from that vegetable base. Okay, so everybody who wants to be food secure should know how to sprout seed. Very basic. Let's learn how to sprout seed. Let's also learn how to grow some microgreens. This can be done in our home in a very small space. And those microgreens don't have to be reseeded all the time. You can literally harvest the tops and then have them regrow. So maybe you can harvest 5, 6, 7 times the microgreens. You're not pulling the whole thing out. Learn to do this basic thing in your home. Let's grow some herbs. Let's grow some things in our home. But if you want to be food secure, you're going to want to learn to sprout things. You're going to want to learn to do microgreens, and you're going to want to learn to harvest seed from the groceries you buy. So if you're buying that pumpkin, if you're buying that, if you're buying any kind of fruit, harvest those seeds. Learn to keep those seeds. Learn to maintain those seeds, and also learn to use those seeds properly. It's very important. So outside, you mentioned moringa, the tree of life, if you will, the most nutritious plant that is grown on the planet without going to the ocean. 27 vitamins and minerals, 4 times the protein of yogurt. Our guys in Uganda had some of them in their parents' house, had moringa trees growing, and the parent would use the seed pod every now and then. In India, what is going on in India is that the predominant use for moringa is eating the seed pods when they're young, kind of like an okra, where they cut it into pieces and they include it in the food. And in fact, if you've eaten a lot of Indian food, you've probably eaten moringa without knowing it. Moringa has kind of a horseradish taste, particularly in the root. It's a little spicy, kind of like a cilantro. It can be used in your salads. It can be used in your soups. You can dehydrate moringa, which is a great way to do it, powderize it. One group here in Panama was telling us that they melt moringa and butter together, and then they put it on the kids' popcorn, and they feed them this popcorn every day to the community. Moringa butter popcorn for the kids, and they're getting all this nutrition out of it without knowing it. You can bake it into cookies. You can bake it into your tortillas. There's all kinds of uses for moringa. Everybody should plant some moringa. We teach using the use of tree circles and planting techniques at Finca Santa Marta that make trees more sustainable. We plant 6 trees in the space, 6 to 12 trees in the space that the average commercial vineyard or orchard would plant 1 tree. So we're planting 6 to 12 trees in the space of 1 tree, and we're doing it in a way that if those trees were ignored for 4 or 5 years, we have not watered. We have an educational area where I've done these tree circles. We have not watered at all those trees during the dry season here in Panama. We should be watering them every week. We've had a issue with one of our water pumps being broken, but even if we hadn't, I wanted to see what would take place with these 1.5-year-old trees, with these tree circles, if they would not only survive, but in our case, they've been thriving. I mean, they've been growing like crazy. because they're planted in tree circles. And I could explain that later, but I'm going to want to plant moringa, and I'm going to want to have 4 rabbits. I need a male rabbit and 3 females. Now, with a male rabbit and 3 females, you are going to have what is necessary to produce enough meat for your family. If you have a normal size family, let's back up. This will produce as much meat as raising 1 steer. The problem with raising 1 steer is the land space necessary, the food amount necessary to convert that steer into meat. Rabbit is second only to meat chickens in its conversion of food to meat ratio. And it produces the healthiest meat known to man. So the healthiest meat product known to man is rabbit. The other thing is you don't need refrigeration because you don't have to harvest everything all at once. So what we did in Lutembe is we started out with a few rabbits. We were raising rabbits at our school campus. We started to give people 3 rabbits and a rabbit hutch. And we wound up eventually having 300 or 400 rabbits on our school campus. And then we were putting these out in the community 3 or 4 at a time. And we required them to give us back 1 rabbit out of every litter that was born. So they were returning to us, if we gave them 3 rabbits and a hutch, they were returning to us 1 rabbit for every litter that was born. We also required that they attend a monthly team meeting of rabbit raisers in the Lutembe area. This could help them keep motivated, prevent the temptation to eat the rabbit now as opposed to waiting. And so that was very crucial. And your moringa can feed your rabbits. You know, you have this tremendously nutritious plant available to you to feed your animals. So moringa can feed your family, it can feed your animals, it can fertilize your gardens. And this is an important understanding of moringa. You can raise moringa as an intensive planting for microgreen type things. We put 300 moringa trees down in a bed that was 3 feet wide by 12 feet long. And they did wonderful until our cows ate them. And then we planted a moringa hedge. We have a hedge of moringa with trees planted 18 inches apart in a row. And then we have 50 mature moringa trees on Finca Santa Marta. Ultimately, the moringa seed pods can be pressed for oil. But the seeds are so valuable now, I don't see moringa oil coming back for a while. But moringa oil has a tremendous amount of benefits to it. So I'm gonna do moringa, I'm gonna do rabbits, and then the next phase, I'm gonna plant some sweet potatoes. I'm gonna plant either any kind of sweet potatoes, but particularly purple ones. Different colors of sweet potatoes have different nutritional profiles. The great thing about sweet potatoes is that they're relatively easy to grow, but you can eat the leaves of the sweet potato as the sweet potato is growing. You can go out and harvest every day. It's like a grocery basket. And you can cook those leaves. You need to cook them, but you can cook those leaves and eat those sweet potato leaves. So you're getting those calories started. You got moringa for nutrition. You've got sweet potatoes for calories. Here in Panama and most of the tropics, you're looking at yucca, or as we know it in English, tapioca. Yucca is a phenomenal plant. You want to grow yams. Yams also will give you that density of calories. And some yam plants can produce a yam as big as 150 pounds. Well, if you're pulling 150 pounds out of the ground with 900 calories per pound, that's a lot of calories, and there's a lot of uses for that plant. There are a lot of easy plants to grow, and so we want to think about what's easy, what produces. You have to have calories, you have to have nutrition, and you have to have taste. Human beings don't do well eating food that doesn't taste good for a long period of time. You can do it for a while to keep from starving, but we're always going to look for something tasty. So you grow you some hot peppers, grow the moringa has some spice to it. And so that's just I'm going to grow papaya like crazy. You can use green papaya like a vegetable for your salads and stuff. You can use the ripe papaya. But if you're not going to plant the papaya seeds, grind those seeds up in your smoothie and drink it, because that's going to deal with parasites. And so, moringa has all kinds of uses. You want to look at the medicinal values of the plants you're growing, as well as, so I've got calories, I've got nutrition, I've got taste, I've got medicine. So we want to, eventually we want to look at things like mushrooms and all kinds of things. But if we're doing it organically, you say, well, how do I do that organically? Well, first of all, I would suggest, if you can, having at least 4 to 10 chickens. And these, if nothing else, to turn your compost for you, to act as your garbage disposal. Okay, so those little guys will help you produce some of the most wonderful compost in the world without a lot of effort on your part. Learn how to keep chickens. We wanted chickens on our property in Uganda because the average Ugandan only got protein once a week. The average school child in Uganda, well, these sponsored school children, they get protein about once every 30 days. Animal-based protein once every 30 days. We wanted them to have protein every day so that their brains worked properly. And so we put 150 chickens in, hoping for 100 eggs a day. And those eggs could be presented not just as eggs, but they could be done in like stir-fry rice, and all kinds of different dishes could contain the eggs. But if we wanted our kids to get some level of protein every day, so that's that's one of the things that you can do, is have that 4 to 10 chickens around. They're going to give you eggs, and they're going to prepare your soils at times. You can move them around. All kinds of benefits to having chickens. So if I have rabbits, I have chickens, and I have moringa, and then I start from there and work my way into other kinds of plantings, other kinds of growing things. If I've learned to sprout food, and if I've learned to grow microgreens, by sprouting my food, that's tremendous power. You take seeds, and if you could cook those lentils in a soup and you're going to get one level of nutrition, sprout those lentils 5 days later. You have expanded the protein, you've expanded the nutrition profile, you've expanded the mineral profile of this food content. It's amazing what sprouting can do. And we're talking a 5-day investment of time and a little bit of time each day for 5 days, and you've got sprouts, microgreens. You're going to want to explore all these things. Get started now. And a big reason for having your chickens is your compost pile, and your compost is so important. But understand this: you want to learn to make a compost tea. A compost tea will give you the multiplying factor of your compost. So if I learn to make a aerated compost tea, takes about 24 hours to do, a little bit of time, a little bit of equipment, but I understand. I give you a basic recipe. I'm going to take one of those net things that people put in 5-gallon buckets of paint. When they're professionally painting a house, go to your paint store, get those nets. That becomes your big compost tea bag. I'm going to throw 2 or 3 pints or liters of compost in that tea bag, preferably compost that I've created on my farm, that I know what the contents are. I'm going to look for some leaf mold underneath some trees. I'm going to throw a little bit of that in there. I'm going to cook some potatoes or rice. I'm going to have 1 or 2 cups of mashed potatoes or rice in that leaf tea bag. Then I'm going to get 2 or 3 cups of native soil, the soil that I'm going to be administering that to. I'm going to put that in the bag, and maybe a little added sugar, but you don't have to because you have the potatoes or the rice. Now I'm going to put that in the water. I'm going to squeeze that bag, and then I'm going to tie it off, and I'm going to let it sit there, and I'm going to aerate that for 24 hours. That gets your microorganisms going. That is an aerobic product. Once it's finished, you dilute it 50-1. Okay, so you see you've taken a very small amount of compost, very small amount of cooked food, a very small amount of dirt from your own garden, and leaf mold. You combined it all. It didn't cost you anything. You then aerate it for 24 hours, and after that 24-hour period, you take that liquid and you dilute it 50-1, and you start pouring it or spraying it on your garden. The other thing that you need to learn how to do is make swamp water. And swamp water, or there's other names for it, but that's a good name, swamp water. And this is taking your weeds and learning the value of your weeds. Don't misunderstand that weeds have value. Now, if you put your weeds in your compost pile, there's a good likelihood you're going to put weed seeds in your compost pile, and you're going to wind up with more weeds. But if you take those weeds and you cut them, I wouldn't even pull them out of the ground. I just cut them straight at the ground, and you take those leaves and you soak them in water, and you can soak them for a long period of time, 2, 3, 4 months, and you just keep adding weeds and adding weeds and adding weeds into a 50-gallon bucket of water. As you want to use your swamp water, I suggest you get a watering can. Now, let's get as low tech as possible. Get a watering can, cut the nozzle off at the level of the watering can, so it's absolutely level. Give you a nice big hole to pour through. You take 1 liter of swamp water, pour it in your watering can, fill it the rest of the way with water, and pour it to the sides, maybe the pathways in your vegetable garden. You don't want to pour this right on your plant because this is anaerobic. Now, why would I want an aerobic solution that's going to give me my microorganisms, that's going to feed those critters in the soil, that's going to make my soil healthy, and then I want the vitamins and minerals coming from my anaerobic solution. We've absorbed vitamins and minerals that the weeds have brought out to the surface. Your sunflowers, if you cut the top of that sunflower off, don't throw away the stalk. Get that in your solution, so you're getting those vitamins and minerals to go back into your garden. And so you brought it from the bottom to the top, and you're adding it to your garden. These are very basic things that you need to know to do organic gardening. Now, let me encourage you with this. The reason you want to do organic, first of all, in the long run, it's cheaper. It's been proven on golf courses. People will say, well, how can it be cheaper? The first 5 years of running an organic golf course is more expensive, but then the price drops precipitously after 5 years. And of course, this is what paying for all amendments and bringing them in. But if you're making your own amendments, if you're adding your own nitrogen, and these are things that, it takes a long time to teach. I can't do it today. But if you're doing those things yourself, then you're not putting money into the organic program. But if you feed your plants with chemical fertilizers, it's like addicting your plants to cocaine. You're feeding the plants and the soil is dying. And so if you're doing it organically, you're feeding the soil and the soil is feeding the plants. This is crucial. And so there's an understanding that comes here with all kinds of natural ways of integrating with nature. But these are the basic, this is the starting point. And this is going to take a knowledge base on your part. You may have to study a little, but look, 10 little baby chicks can be acquired. Starting a compost pile, even if you don't have those chickens, just start a compost pile, getting some moringa trees planted, doing some of those things. And you know, the reason I got into organics is because I tried to do it the other way. I tried to at 24 years of age, I bought my own home, and I was going to do the landscaping on the home, and I made every single possible mistake you can make, including flooding my own garage with water because I built the bed wrong. I mean, I made every mistake you could possibly make. So you want to get beyond the mistake stage. And the way you do that is by gaining knowledge from people who've already done it, and knowing that it's going to take a minute. You can't just start the day the world falls apart. And it doesn't take the world falling apart for you to go without food. All it takes in Dallas is a threat of an ice storm, and Walmart is empty in a few hours, and it takes them 90 it takes them 90 hours to replace all that stuff. And that's if everything is working perfectly. So you don't need to wait until when everybody was out buying toilet paper. I didn't go out and buy toilet paper. Why? Because I had a supply. Buy a little bit at a time. Every time you go to the grocery store, some extra rice, some extra legumes, some extra beans, and then learn how to do things like sprouting, how to grow some microgreens, and start getting plants in the ground. And you can, it's the earth hates being naked. And so whatever plants you can put in the ground, immediately put it in the ground. And you can do that with your pumpkin at the grocery store, get those seeds out of there. You can do it with your papaya. You can do it with anything that you're looking at that grocery store and it has a seed in there. Get that seed in the ground, get it growing. And at least you have the roots impacting the soil, and that live root in the soil makes all the difference in the world. Are you in shock?
Phil, yeah, I'm as you can see, I have been typing away here. Only given the bullet point, but then they have to listen to you for some of the details. These are wonderful first steps to take for an individual. And I might just remind everyone, this is scalable. So an individual, I can get busy here, or I can take these same principles and notes, meet with a whole team, and we do it on a larger scale. Meet with a whole church and do it on a larger scale. So it is all scalable, but the principle is the same. You just laid out the dynamics for protein, nutrition, and creating your own compost and your own fertilizers. Very important.
If I were pastoring a church today, I would strongly consider starting a food security, food sovereignty life skills program.
Wow, that's right.
Allow a once a month meeting at the church, have a general meeting, and then split off into small groups. So you have your mushroom guy teaching people how to do mushrooms, and you have your fertilizer guy, and you have you have these different people who already have this knowledge base or who can gain it quickly, and start giving it out to people in small groups, encouraging, we have this monthly meeting. Certainly you should have it as a potluck. I mean, you should have food there. Let everybody bring their food and show off their food. You may want to have, we had to have how to make a salad classes in Africa because nobody would eat the vegetables. So not only did we have a how to make your salad class, we had a contest on who could make the best salads. And this is the whole idea of integrating it into your local church. Get it into small groups. Do it as a fellowship. Do it as an encouragement. And you want to have things like health fairs, that type of thing. Teach people to juice, teach people because they're going to be more interested in growing their own food if they know the benefit. And if everybody's bringing 20 or 30% of the food they grow back to the church to give to the poor, then now you have influence. And the story I didn't tell about Lutembe is this. During COVID, we had 1,000 conversions out of a 2,000 population community. We had 1,000 conversions. Almost the entire number of those who practiced witchcraft were saved during that time. They were going to be the hardest to influence over a long period of time. They were the most entrenched, but we had 1,500 at-risk people, 2,000 in the total community, and in an 18-month period of time, we had 1,000 conversions to Christ in that one little community in Africa. The community was revolutionized by food first, and then by faith.
Amazing. Phil, okay, so I'm a pastor here and I'm saying, Phil, what do I do in my church? A couple of weeks ago, you mentioned to me, you don't need the whole church, you just need a team. So talk to me about that.
What I would do is I would stand up in my congregation and I would present, the story of Joseph is very interesting because I was told as a young person, we're going to be a Joseph generation. You can't separate Joseph from food, and you can't separate Joseph from power, political power. And the food brought about transitions in political power. And so if you study that life, and one of the most interesting things about Joseph was preservation of food, not growing of food. So here this person in ancient Egypt knew how or figured out how to preserve food at least 8 years. And preserving food multiplies the value of that food. If I can grow food today and I can save it until food is more scarce, then that food becomes much more valuable. And so you're creating a food bank by preservation. So we learn to preserve, we learn to concentrate the nutrition of the food. I took to that island in San Blas 50 pounds of superfood powder that we made on the farm. That 50 pounds of superfood powder easily represented about 2,500 pounds of food. And so I couldn't put 2,500 pounds of food in a suitcase and get it to San Blas, but I could put 50 pounds in a suitcase and get it to San Blas. Now, so I've concentrated the nutrition and I made it available. So we take that food that is filling, that posha, that the yuca, all the different filling foods, those calorie foods, and then we add the nutrition powder to it, and you've exponentially expanded the value of that food. So as a pastor, I want to stand up in my platform and I want to say, look, we need to be prepared for the future. We also need to be living a better life, not tied to the economic system of this world so tightly. And this is a way we can do it. We can separate ourselves from the economic system of the world by growing our own food, by being involved in this, not only food security, but food sovereignty, where we control our food destiny, if you will. And now I'm looking for people who really aren't involved in anything else in this church. There's a lady in our church here in Boquete, not I say our church, but the church I attend, who knows at least as much, maybe more, than I do about growing food for her own family. She is very talented. She is very good. Her name is Bess. Not Bess, my wife, the other Bess. And she is from Ghana, and Guyana. I'm sorry, not Ghana, Guyana. And she is Guyanese Indian. And it's amazing how much she knows about food, how in touch she is with growing food. And, it started out of a need for her, but her family moved to Canada and they lived the North American dream, if you will. And then they came here to Panama. And she really understands food. There's a little lady in your church. There's an old man in your church. There's a young guy in your church that's excited about medicinal mushrooms. There's a young guy in your church that's excited about microgreens or growing organics. There are some people there that the Holy Spirit has already prepared. The Holy Spirit's already touched. They're already interested. You're not having to push them. You're not having to prod them. And so you stand up and say, look, I really understand that there's some people in this congregation that God has probably already prepared to help us with this vision. Would you meet with me after church for pie with the pastor? And let's sit and let's talk about and let's strategize what it would take to feed more hungry people, more hungry children in our community, and what it would take to secure our food futures in this church. And if you're the usher, if you're bogged down with so many projects in this church and you're involved in the choir and you're mowing the lawn already and you're doing this, I don't need you. What I need is some people who haven't been activated yet. And you don't, if you have 100 people in your church, you need 5. If you have 200 people in your church, you start, the larger the church, you're looking at 1% of the congregation. If you have 1% of the congregation involved in this project, it could make a huge difference to your influence in your own community. Food is power, and people respect. I mean, the level of respect I've received here in Boquete, Panama, because of my knowledge of organics is huge. And I've been celebrated here in this country because there's a lot of things I'm knowledgeable about, and I've written 15 books, but that's not what I'm celebrated for. They're celebrating me for my ability to grow food that's healthy and nutritious and chemical free, and to teach other people to do it. That's what I'm being celebrated for. So food gains influence, and food should only be given to adults in extreme situations. There's a natural disaster. We shouldn't have an ongoing feeding program to feed poor people forever. That doesn't make sense to me. Now, children, that's a different story. Children are born dependent. But food gains us power in our community. We gave away food in Lutembe to make up the difference for 18 months. And we did it as we raised the money. But again, we spent probably close to $100,000 on food. And during that time, we installed a new greenhouse. We installed a fish farm, aquaponics we had torn down a building. We ripped up the foundation of that building and made a vegetable garden where there was cement before. And so we took it very serious about growing as much food as we possibly could on our campus, but there wasn't a lot of space. But we filled in the blanks, of our microfarms program with giving away food. But by giving away that $100,000 worth of food, we said to the community that we care about you. We understand you're going through a crisis, and therefore we'll stand with you in a crisis. We're not going to feed you every day for the rest of your life, but we'll stand with you in a crisis. And when I meet with the kings of the comarca, when I met with them, one of the first things I say is, I'm not here to steal your dignity. The last thing I want to do is to make your men lazy, to make your women lazy. I'm not here to provide for them as if they were children. I'm here to activate their adulthood. I'm here to activate their manhood and to show them how that they can have a greater impact in their own community. And so food gives them power. If you're the guy in your community and you're barely making it, and all of a sudden you're growing enough food for your family and you can sell 50% of that food that you're growing to other people, and you're giving some food to some needy children in your community, that revolutionizes who you are in that community. So food is power. Food can also be used as a weapon. Not that we would use it that way, but governments are using food as a weapon. They're controlling people's behavior with food. They're controlling nations with food. So we need to really, as the body of Christ, as leadership, community leadership, whatever you are, really consider the idea that food is the future. And if let's say scenario, as you were talking, the US dollar is all of a sudden not recognized as an international currency trade, and therefore the dollar, and it doesn't even take that. All it takes is China refusing to buy any more debt, and then them dumping $1 trillion of all the money we owe them, just $1 trillion at 10% on the dollar into the international community, and all of a sudden we have a D rating as far as a country. America is a third world nation just with those two moves by China alone. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not an end of the world. It doesn't take all that. All it takes is a breakdown of the supply chain. All it takes is the native Indians, protesting gas prices. And 2 or 3 weeks in, I was looking at the same thing. In 1 week, we can't deliver to Tuesday market. In 1 week, we don't have enough gas
Global food
to operate the farm. So it's important that we operate as groups. It's important that we use mass buying like the church in Panama. We use every tool available to us. Farms are great. I think that the average church should think in terms of maybe 1 or 2 acres. If they had 1 or 2 acres that they could dedicate and have people buy a percentage of that farm, sell it as shares, and they share the cost, and they share the whatever abundance comes from that farm. Learning to make your own fertilizers, and so many different ways of doing that. Learning to make your own wetting agents, liquid soaps, learning to make your own fungicide and pesticide. All those things can be done organically, and all those things can be done for pennies on the dollar of what you would spend to do it either organically or chemically. So chemical is not a bargain at this point. You're spending a Rolls Royce to get a Volkswagen return. And so, I'm happy for anybody to reach out to us. I'm happy to share my knowledge. If people want to visit us in Panama, that's always available. I want Finca Santa Marta to be a place of learning. But I think that every church, every school, every orphanage, every community center should be growing food.
Yes. Yeah, I believe that as well. Phil, I was thinking also, let's expand over now to just a moment. I'm a mayor, or I'm a city council person. So I'm involved with government and I'm in charge of people, but I do have a heart for this message. What do I do now? We talked about pastor stepping up and saying, well, I need a team. Now, what does a mayor or let's say a government official do?
Well, governments run on a carrot and stick philosophy. We reward or we punish, and that's how we get things done. So if you look at Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka is interesting to me. One of my closest friends is from Sri Lanka. His father and now himself pastor the largest church in that country. And so they dictated, we're not going to buy chemicals anymore, and farmers are going to be organic. Now, Sri Lanka was on your list of food insecure countries, and yet Sri Lanka was growing food like crazy. I mean, every time I've been there, the amount of food that is grown in Sri Lanka and the quality of food is fantastic. Instead of dictating. First of all, it's very difficult to say to somebody, you're going to convert in 6 months, one operation to another. You have to start educating and rewarding. So if I were a mayor, I'd be thinking about the public events that I could do that rewarded organic growing, that rewarded food security, start talking about food security. I think it was the Netherlands offered 3 chickens to any family who wanted them. And the amount of waste that was reduced from their sanitation system was absolutely phenomenal, just with 3 chickens per family. And only about 300 families accepted the offer. And yet they reduced the waste going into the landfills just with that one thing. So as a mayor, as somebody who is a community leader, I could see benefits to the infrastructure of the community by encouraging growth. Now in Switzerland, one of the things that I love about the idea of Switzerland is that they have everyone has backyard gardens, but they aren't trying to grow everything their family needs. They become experts in one thing. So you have the corn guy, and you have the turnip guy, and you have the rabbit guy, and you have all these people growing 3 or 4 different things, and they become experts in it, and then they trade with each other. So your church, your community center, can be a place of trade. The first thing I would do as a mayor is to make sure I had a farmer's market and make sure there was a variety of stuff in the farmer's market. So if unlike Africa, if you sell yucca, you got 50 people selling it. If you sell cassava, you got 50 people selling the exact same thing. So what I would do is I'd reward the people who were growing things that other people weren't by giving them the premier places in the market, by showcasing them. And so constantly think about what kind of carrot can I hold out for people? What applause, a certificate. You're making a difference in our community by being organic. The government of Panama sent the representatives from Cuba to our farm, from the Cuban government, who were over the Organic Association. And if you want to learn ground up organic farming, a great place to learn that successful programs is Cuba, because they were forced to, once Russia was no longer interested in the sugar they could get from Cuba, they pulled all the subsidies for chemical farming out of that country, and they were forced to go organic. So before you're forced to go organic, just go ahead and go there. But if you look at the Cuban people, they really dug down into their history, and they started applying organics in a very real way. And so I felt like I was preaching to the choir, having these Cuban people come to our farm. And so basically I just started asking them questions about how they would do it if they were us. And great interchange, very positive group of people, loved being with them. But that's the type of thing that growing food gives you influence. And I think, one of the things I faced in Africa, one of the things I faced is our young people seeing farming as a lowly endeavor, that people only farm if they're poor. And so if we can change that mindset, we had two young men decided that they were going to go into the pork industry. And so they got a big truck, and they would go into the farming community, and they would buy pigs, and they would bring it back to town, and they would butcher the pigs, and they'd sell the meat. And then they would buy all the products that the farmers needed, and they'd take them to the farmers, and they'd sell the farmers all their products off their truck before they bought more pigs. And they became very wealthy young men in Uganda. And we helped sponsor a pork production seminar in Uganda with 10,000 people in attendance. And it just started off with their idea, and we helped them. We undergirded what they were doing for that seminar, but it was their deal, and so over and over again, there are ideas that come from other ideas. But you have to get started. You have to do something and do it. Start watching YouTube videos, start doing something today, start challenging, really understanding food and how we get food and the supply chain and how easily that is to break, how easy it is to manipulate. And it will, and if I'm going to be a Joseph to a generation, then food has got to be a part of my ministry.
That's true. That is so true. Well, Phil, thank you so much. Man, we could just keep on going. I was thinking, what if I'm a teacher or a principal? We start training the kids, set up a greenhouse, do something. If I'm a stay-at-home mom, I think of I've got a friend that we have traveled and done many nations and conferences together. And I was traveling with him through his nation, and his wife was in the car too. And we just started talking about all this global food revolution. And she said, I just love growing vegetables, and she, by the time we had about 2 hours in the car, she said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start a home group. And we're just going to start bringing our seeds and our plants and exchange and all of that. We'll do a little Bible study and pray for each other. And you know what? She started a revolutionary thing just by saying, I found my niche. I found what I love to do, and there's all kinds of people around me that I know they love it too. We're going to get together for coffee and tea and bring our plants together. And, saying that, there are so many ideas and so many things that the Holy Spirit is telling people to do in this day, brand new things for us that are revolutionary and will reach people that never could have ever been reached before, never found their niche or their place before, but this is it.
Exactly. Pastors don't need to be overwhelmed. They don't need to think about their lack of knowledge when it comes to food. What they need to do is stand in their pulpit and say, if you already have an interest, the Holy Spirit has prepared you for such a time as this. And we need a small group in this church, and R2, R3. And it's not going to take a lot of administration. It's not going to take the pastor's involvement doesn't have to be primary, but he has to be the cheerleader. And so once you are willing to be the cheerleader, then you turn these people loose in things that they're already passionate about. They're already doing it. And there's so many ways to be involved, and you're going to be seen as somebody who really understands community, really understands people's needs, really understands the environment as you proceed in this journey. And as far as schools are concerned, I just want to remind those who are involved in school that agriculture is a phenomenal way to teach practicality of mathematics, practicality of biology, practicality of sciences. All these different things can be made practical through agriculture. And so I think every school should have an agriculture program. Every school should have a horticulture program, and with the intent of the kids learning, but also producing food. One of the things that we wanted our kids to do at our school is an egg program where they learn to raise their own chickens at home, and they were responsible for bringing half of the eggs that they produced back to the school to share with the other children at the school. So, and what that would do was simply say that every home in our community that had a child in it knew how to produce eggs. And that would get them started in something. So again, if I were going to start tomorrow, I'd be looking at moringa, I'd be looking at rabbits, I'd be looking at sweet potatoes, and I'd be looking at compost outside. Inside, I'd be looking at sprouting, and I'd be looking at microgreens.
Amen. Wow. Excellent. I might mention, Phil, that we have a 3-legged stool approach and on our farm, soon to be 4. 4 legs is less easy to tip over, but 3 right now. We use chicken poop all the time. We roll it into our rows, and that provides for us. We're doing superfood nutrition leaves, and so chicken poop grows lots of top growth well, and so we use it like crazy. It's cheap if you have to buy it. In your case, a certified organic farm, you're going to create it yourself. And so we do that. That's one. Number 2, we use rabbit tea. You're all about rabbits, and we're all about rabbits as well. We take the poop and the pee from the rabbits. We have a way to just put it in a 55-gallon drum in a tea bag. We bubble it, add a liter of molasses for sugar. We bubble it for 5 days, and we inject it into the lines, into the farm. The whole farm thrives, and the soil grows, and the earthworms come, and the microbiotics work. Everything works great with the rabbit tea. And then number 3 is composting. If you can take those weeds, as you said, take the weeds and all your old vines and your table scraps and all of that, and you can convert all that energy right down into beautiful soil that will literally grow your plants for the first. We take a handful of that soil, it grows the plant for the first 6 weeks without anything else needed. There's so much energy in it. And so number 4, we're hoping to accomplish in the future, and that will be worm tea, worm castings, and grow our own earthworms. But that's something we've had to learn. The rabbit tea is very easy to do. If you have 4 rabbits, you can harvest the poop and the pee very, very easily, and that will create massive energy. And you can just get off the grid. You don't worry about whether Ukraine and Russia is sending out fertilizer or not. You don't worry if it's up 300, 400%, because you don't need it. You don't use it. We can do it all at home. Bring it in, revolutionize food growing at the home. And as all the things that Phil has said here today, I hope you got bullet points. We did write those down so you could see them while he was speaking. And let me mention just a couple other things as well. This revolutionary type of thinking literally has saved. We've saved many, many farms over the last few years. I've been in pastors' conferences talking about the global food revolution, and many of them caught a hold of this and said, I have a farm. I was getting ready to sell the farm to build a bigger church building, but I think now we're going to hold on to the farm, forget the building, and start growing food. And we've saved a lot of farms. And you will find also, when you take this message to your community, to your neighbors, to your church, or wherever you hang out at, you're going to find people will join the revolution, and they will change their mind. They will change their thinking. And when they do change, they come right on board with the vision and what God's called you to do to help lead your community. And then also, I had mentioned earlier that we really believe, I believe personally, that this current famine that is on right now, hundreds of millions are at food insecurity and at risk of starvation now. This, according to many of the world organizations, is going to go to 1.2 billion in the coming years. By 2025, up to 1.2 billion people will not be able to find 1,000 calories per day to eat. That is famine. And so this is why this webinar has been done. And what we find, though, is this famine is man-made. It's a man-made famine. Now, the one back in Exodus, I think it was in Exodus, with Joseph and Pharaoh of the day, that was a real famine. That was 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. And what does Pharaoh do? Well, Pharaoh was the government of the day. He concocted a plan, but by the end of the 7 years, everyone would have signed their farms over, and he would own all the land and territory, and they would be slaves on the land they formerly had, in order so that they could continue to eat. Now, if we would understand history repeats itself, this man-made famine is geared to take your land, your cars, your houses, your farms, everything, and roll it up under Pharaoh. And by 2030, as they have already publicly declared, you will own nothing, but you'll be happy. I think what they really mean is you'll just be happy if you're still alive. So, so this is revolutionary. This is revolt. And I love what you said, Phil, because I've always been a rebel. It's growing food is rebellion. It's rebellious against the system of control. And as we're just now coming in, we're in 2023. This is the beginning, only the beginning of famine. So this is the time right now. There's no time to waste. Get your ark built and get the roof on it now. Get growing food and get more information and join the community. Build your ark, get your community together, because it's going to get bumpy and it's going to get rough over the next 7 years. Rough enough that many could die, many villages and communities could cease to exist, and many farms and lands and properties are going to be rolling right into the globalist foreclosed and people owning nothing, hopefully still alive by 2030. So we are the resistance. We are the food growers. We are the global food revolutionaries. And I want to thank you for joining us today. Let's continue to connect together. You may see right now my book, Food is Power. I put in the chat post. If you'll look there's a place you can click on to see the chat section. I just clicked the link for you to click on right on your phone, right on your computer. You click on the link, put your name in and your email, boom, and you have the PDF file. It'll download right into your phone. And enjoy that book. Please feel free to share it. I always say this, that book, Food is Power, is copyrighted. So if you're going to copy it right. Okay, that means get that book into the hands of everyone you can and help them understand what you just learned and what we're all working together to prepare the world for. With that, Phil, again, thank you so much for all that you gave in today. Any final thoughts before we close it?
You know, I just think this is an easy thing to ignore if you allow yourself to, but you'll regret it. And if you're a leader, you have a responsibility to your people to help them see the future, not you know, and to prepare. I mean, my Y2K strategy was to eat samples at Costco's. I just didn't believe anything was going to happen, and nothing did happen. But those days are over. Things are happening. They're happening at an incredibly fast rate, and we need to be aware of it, and we need to get it started as soon as possible. And when you do, you'll be influencing people for the kingdom of God.
So true. So true. Thank you, Phil. And thanks to Pastor Mario, who was here as well. Pastor Dawes, who dropped in on us for just a moment. We really appreciate you all. And this recording will be made available. If you need it, send me an email and I'll send you the link as soon as it is up and running. God bless you all. We thank you, and we'll look forward to the next Global Food Revolution seminar, webinar as well. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you soon.